Chapter 1167. The Art of Changing Seas and Mulberry Field. For a moment, everything within the range of Lu Ping's theurgy withered. This kind of theurgy was even more terrifying than the number 1 wood attribute theurgy, the fallen petals in profusion, which could reduce a cultivator's vitality and lifespan. This person must not be left alive. Patriarch Frigid Leaf's heart skipped a beat as the thought flashed through his mind. After this thought flashed through his mind, Hanya Laozu also became unstoppable. He stretched out his hand, and the pair of jade bracelets immediately appeared on his wrist. Then, he saw Hanya Laozu's hands suddenly pressing down, and he suddenly shouted, "1,000 miles of ice." The desolate scenery that had been turned lifeless by Lu Ping's art of changing seas and mulberry fields for several miles was suddenly covered with a layer of white fog, frost, and ice crystals. It suddenly turned into a world of ice and snow. The world was still desolate, but there was a huge whirlpool that suddenly opened its mouth, wanting to devour this world of ice and snow and grind it into pieces. Hanya Laozu looked over. It was not a natural disaster, but a sword art whirlpool. Although Hanya Laozu was not a sword cultivator, he was not unfamiliar with sword cultivators. He could clearly feel that this huge sword art whirlpool had a feeling of returning to the origin for any sword theurgy. If the opponent was also a sword cultivator and used a sword theurgy to fight against him, then the opponent's theurgy would inevitably collapse and automatically fuse in front of Lu Ping's sword art whirlpool. However, if the opponent was not a sword cultivator, then this sword art whirlpool was a theurgy that could destroy everything. When a cultivator faced this theurgy, they would either use their own theurgy to defeat him, or be completely grinded to pieces by this theurgy. Facing Hanya Laozu's supreme theurgy, Lu Ping chose to face it head-on. In fact, after the opponent dodged his art of changing seas and mulberry fields, Lu Ping had already set up this Sea of 100 Rivers sword art. It was originally a backup for a series of attacks. However, with Hanya Laozu's profound cultivation, he actually reacted so quickly in such a short time. Helpless, Lu Ping had no choice but to release the arrow on the bow. Creak, creak, creak. If Hanya Laozu wanted to freeze Lu Ping, he would first have to freeze this sword theurgy. If Lu Ping wanted to trap Hanya Laozu in the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art, he would first have to grind the ice and snow apart. For a moment, the two theurgy were actually locked in a stalemate in mid-air. Lu Ping was still holding on, but the shock in Hanya Laozu's heart had reached another level. His level of cultivation was far above Lu Ping's, and the quality of the pair of purple jade bracelets in his hands was slightly higher than the thin water-flowing sword. Moreover, the peerless theurgy of the 1,000 miles of ice was also one of the most famous secret techniques in the world of cultivation. However, at this moment, he was in a stalemate with a third-generation adept at the mid-Dharma stage. What a strong true essence, what a brilliant swordsmanship, what a powerful supreme divine ability. Amidst the loud crash, Hanya Laozu's frozen world was instantly shattered, and Lu Ping's Sea of 100 Rivers sword art also came to an end. This time, the direct confrontation between the two of them was actually a stalemate. Hanya Laozu's expression of disbelief could not help but become more cautious, while Lu Ping, on the other hand, gained a little more confidence. Just as the peerless theurgy of the two of them broke apart, a few rays of sword light suddenly pierced through the ice and sword aura that filled the sky, heading straight for Hanya Laozu. At the same time, Hanya Laozu also threw out a few icicles towards Lu Ping. Pitter-patter, the two of them were fighting for an opportunity to kill each other quickly, but neither of them could do anything to the other. Hanya Laozu formed a seal with his hand, then struck it in the direction of Lu Ping. What followed was a loud crash, and the entire ground shook. The ground that was originally covered in silver shattered once again, and boundless ice and snow flew in all directions, turning the area that was previously enveloped by the 1,000 miles of ice into a slaughterhouse. Great Snow Avalanche, the second peerless theurgy of the ice and snow secret technique. Although this place was not a snowy mountain or glacier where avalanches would occur easily, the space that was previously enveloped by the 1,000 miles of ice was completely suitable for the Great Snow Avalanche. The 1,000 miles of ice and the Great Snow Avalanche were two peerless theurgy secret techniques that were extremely closely linked. Cultivators who had cultivated the 1,000 miles of ice would usually have to cultivate the Great Snow Avalanche as well. Only by combining the two peerless theurgy would they be able to unleash an even stronger might. Junling's Tian Shui Laozu had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage many years ago, and he had cultivated the 1,000 miles of ice, a peerless theurgy. It was a pity that he did not manage to cultivate the great snow avalanche after that. However, Tian Shui Laozu and Tianfan Laozu had cultivated Junling's secret combination attack technique. In addition to Tianfan Laozu's successful cultivation of the peerless theurgy secret technique, whirlwind scattered clouds, the two of them combined to form a set of peerless theurgy that complemented each other's powers, the snow-torturing wind glutton. This became the method that the two of them, who were at the mid-Dharma stage, used to fight against late Dharma stage adepts. Hanya Laozu's abilities were obviously far above Tian Shui Laozu's. To be able to use these two peerless theurgy consecutively so easily, Hanya Laozu was confident that even if Lu Ping was a cultivator of the same level as him, he would not be able to handle it in a short period of time. Hanya Laozu's continuous use of these two peerless theurgy consecutively was also because he had accurately calculated that Lu Ping's inner yuan might not be able to gather together in a short period of time. This had become an opportunity for Hanya Laozu to defeat Lu Ping. Opportunity? If it was before he met Lu Ping, Hanya Laozu would never have thought that he would need to look for an opportunity to defeat a middle Dharma stage cultivator. Although the world of ice and snow had blocked Hanya Laozu's vision, it did not affect Hanya Laozu's detection. However, just as Hanya Laozu's divine will had entered this chaotic world, he was prepared to see Lu Ping scrambling to deal with the tyrannical Shentong's suppression in front of him and take the opportunity to kill him. Just as he was about to take the opportunity to kill him, Hanya Laozu's expression suddenly changed. It was still that sparkling white world, but inside it, there was a similarly sparkling and tranquil place. No matter how violently Hanya Laozu's ice and snow wreaked havoc, it was unable to break this tranquil place in the middle. A huge white jade lotus bloomed, and countless runes flowed on the huge lotus petals. In the land of ice and snow, everything within a radius of several feet was completely suppressed by the lotus formation. Lu Ping stood in the middle of the flower, above the formation. He slowly raised both his hands, and the huge lotus formation began to rise slowly. Wherever it passed, all the ice and snow disappeared. Hanya Laozu's body quickly moved away, but he suddenly saw that the sky around him had suddenly been arranged with 12 huge stars. Hanya Laozu only felt that no matter which direction he wanted to go, he would suddenly bump into one of the stars, and he would immediately be surrounded by the other 11 stars. Hanya Laozu calmed himself down. He knew that this was probably a trick that his opponent had set up a long time ago. However, he did not understand why Lu Tianping did not summon this magic power at the beginning. Instead, he only summoned this formation after fighting with him for a long time. In fact, this reason was very simple in Lu Ping's eyes. It was because he wanted to give it a try. He wanted to test the true gap between himself and a veteran great cultivator. Now that he had an idea in his heart, Lu Ping naturally summoned the tricks that he had set up earlier one by one and let loose. The two purple jade bracelets on Hanya Laozu's wrists were thrown out again. One of them stood under his feet, and the other hovered above his head. A faint ice wall appeared around Hanya Laozu. This ice wall was not a defensive method set up with ice, but it actually completely froze the surrounding space. The world of ice and snow suddenly shattered, and a huge lotus slowly rose up. Lu Ping stood on the formation, and the 12 pearls hanging in the sky resonated with each other. It was as if the entire world was under Lu Ping's control. Spirit restriction. The Lingqi around Hanya Laozu completely dissipated, and there was no longer any Lingqi floating around Hanya Laozu. Suppressing mountain. Hanya Laozu felt the space around him start to compress inexplicably. The protective ice wall that he had set up using his spatial ability immediately started to creak and crack. Hanya Laozu's expression changed slightly, and he suddenly heard Lu Ping shout, "Striking God." The 12 stars that were hanging in the sky instantly appeared around Hanya Laozu like meteors. The ice wall that was already unable to withstand the heavy load was instantly smashed through with a loud rumble. The two purple jade bracelets on his head and feet resonated with each other, and a profound ice pillar directly sealed Hanya Laozu within it. Amidst a series of densely packed smashing sounds, the light on the two purple jade bracelets trembled violently, becoming increasingly dim. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and clenched his fist, treading. Each Genchen bead brought about a violent wave, and the natal Genchen formation became more and more violent. The purple jade bracelets suddenly began to shake. Under the fierce attack of the natal Genchen formation, the surface of the two first tribulation spirit treasures even began to crack. However, Hanya Laozu just frowned and remained indifferent. Seeing that the two jade bracelets were about to completely shatter, the spirit hidden in the original body let out a panicked tremble. Hanya Laozu suddenly opened his eyes, and the two jade bracelets on his head immediately returned to Hanya Laozu's body. The resistance of the Genchen formation suddenly disappeared, and the 12 Genchen beads suddenly rushed toward Hanya Laozu like a tsunami. However, a purple jade ring suddenly rose from the top of Hanya Laozu's head. A dense purple aura suddenly burst out from the jade ring, and the 12 Genchen beads that came from all directions, along with the violent wave of spiritual energy, were all frozen in mid-air. Purple jade ice essence. A second tribulation spirit treasure. Another 1,000 miles of ice. With the help of this second tribulation spirit treasure refined from the purple jade ice essence, Hanya Laozu completely froze the Genchen formation in one fell swoop. The whole formation suddenly began to tremble violently. This was Lu Ping trying his best to get the 12 Genchen beads out of the ice. However, Hanya Laozu would not give Lu Ping this chance again. The jade ring made from the purple jade ice essence floated above his head, and Hanya Laozu went straight to Lu Ping in the lotus formation. Hanya Laozu wanted to use this second tribulation spirit treasure to completely kill the minor repairs in front of him, who had brought him so much trouble. Clang! Unknowingly, a praying mantis lay on Lu Ping's shoulder, and the two big blades in front of it crisscrossed. Clang! There was a sound of gold and iron colliding. Hanya Laozu screamed in disbelief. His body with the jade ring on his head did not advance but retreated. Two huge rays of light crisscrossed over the top of Hanya Laozu's head. The solid purple aura that diffused from the purple jade ring was cut off by the intersecting rays of light. Chapter 1168. The Northern Alliance was the most powerful sect in the East Sea apart from the Crystal Palace. However, when it came to the history of sects, the Northern Alliance had the shortest history apart from the Carefree sect, which had just become a large sect. Even so, the Northern Alliance had only accumulated 3 second tribulation spiritual treasures in the past thousands of years. They were in the hands of Gui Yi, Chu Yi, and Hanya respectively. When Hanya first joined the Northern Alliance, his initial goal was to obtain the spiritual treasure halving. However, the spiritual treasure halving had always been a very special existence in the Northern Alliance. In the end, it fell into the hands of Chu Yi Laozu, who had more experience in the Northern Alliance. Hanya and Chu Yi were originally estranged because of Gui Yi Laozu. After that, Hanya tried every possible way to transfer the spiritual treasure halving from Chu Yi Laozu to himself. Because of this, the two of them even had a huge argument. In the end, Patriarch Crimson Leaf had no choice but to gather a large amount of the Northern Alliance's power. They found the purple jade ice essence, a treasure of heaven and earth, in the Northern Icefield's 10,000-year frigid ice spirit treasure. With that, the Northern Alliance's ice spirit treasure passed through the second thunder tribulation and became a second tribulation spirit treasure. Hanya Laozu no longer had any reason to cause trouble for Chu Yi Laozu because of the spiritual treasure. However, Chu Yi Laozu, who was naturally suspicious, had some bad associations because of this. This originally narrow hostility, in the end, caused Chu Yi Laozu to be suspicious of Hanya Laozu. Secretly, he got closer to the truth. Hanya Laozu seemed to have frequent contact with people outside of the Northern Alliance. Unfortunately, Chu Yi Laozu did not have a strong background like Hanya Laozu. The two of them had similar status in the Northern Alliance, and their strength was also similar. If Chu Yi Laozu wanted to move to Hanya Laozu, there were only 2 ways. One was to obtain the support of the most representative of the Northern Alliance, Gui Yi Laozu. Gui Yi Laozu was Hanya Laozu's cultivation partner. The second way was for Chu Yi Laozu to control the evidence of Hanya Laozu's betrayal of the Northern Alliance. Therefore, Chu Yi Laozu could only wait patiently until everything was ready. However, Hanya Laozu did not need to do this. Just when Hanya Laozu felt that he was suspected by Chuyi Laozu, the power behind him could immediately use Mara's army to kill Chuyi Laozu in Phantom City. The spiritual treasure is broken in two. How could it be in your hands? Forefather Cold Leaf couldn't care less about the spirit treasure above him, which had lost some of its essence in the first exchange. After dodging the scissors, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Lu Ping naturally noticed the fervent look in his eyes. Lu Ping giggled and said, "Senior, if the spirit treasure isn't in my hands, who else could it be?" Hanya Laozu was speechless. Lu Ping understood immediately. When Chuyi Laozu led the Northern Alliance disciples, it was already a dead end. Even if Hanya Laozu was not a participant, he must have known. No wonder the second-generation disciple of the Northern Alliance, Lin Jingtang, hated Hanya Laozu to the bone. Before he died, he would rather reveal the Northern Alliance's treasure to Lu Ping and use this as a condition for Lu Ping to kill him. Seeing Lu Ping's expression, how could Hanya Laozu not know that Lu Ping had already guessed something? He sneered. "You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. Our sect needs the mist to suppress the Broken Water faction, and you delivered this to us. Since that's the case, I'm afraid we can't let you live today." Lu Ping snickered and said, "That depends on whether Senior has the ability or not." The word ability was spoken repeatedly. Like a great bell, what followed was a blue light with the lotus formation under Lu Ping's feet as the center, spreading all the way to the surroundings. The 12 frozen Genchen beads behind Hanya Laozu shone brightly. Hanya Laozu secretly said, "Not good." But before he could do anything, the 12 Genchen beads had broken free from the shackles of Hanya Laozu's ice magic power and hung in the sky again. The moment the Genchen beads were about to break free, Hanya Laozu quickly retreated out of the lotus formation. However, the lotus formation under Lu Ping's feet began to extend in the direction of Hanya Laozu's retreat. For a moment, Hanya Laozu couldn't escape the coverage of the lotus formation. At the same time, after the 12 Genchen beads broke free, without Lu Ping casting the telekinesis spell, the 12 Genchen beads had already broken through space, divided into 12 directions, and surrounded the retreating Hanya Laozu in the formation again. To be able to control objects from a distance, and to be able to control 12 spirit-nurturing treasures at that, this person's attainments in the spatial divine arts were almost the same as his own. However, his divine will was so strange that he was actually able to control 12 treasures at the same time. The longer he tangled with Lu Ping, the more helpless Hanya Laozu felt. This was because the cultivator in front of him, whose cultivation was lower than his, really had the strength to fight against him, and his methods were endless. Every time Hanya Laozu thought that he had forced out all of Lu Ping's methods, Lu Ping would display a refreshing method, and every refreshing method made Hanya Laozu's heart tremble. The natal Genchen formation, the 2 spirit treasures, the thin water flowing sword, and the mysterious and extremely annoying 5 elements flying sword. After careful calculation, there were a total of 13 spirit-nurturing magic treasures, 4 spirit treasures, and one of them was a second calamity spirit treasure. If an ordinary cultivator saw this, they would think that these treasures would belong to at least 10 Dharma adepts. But now, they had appeared in the hands of one person, and this person was using them as if they were nothing. Was he really only at the mid-Dharma stage? Even Hanya Laozu began to have doubts. This was because, from the beginning until now, Hanya Laozu only had 3 spirit treasures on him, and 2 of them were originally in pairs, just like the thin water flowing sword in Lu Ping's hands. At this moment, it looked more like Hanya Laozu had been forced to use all his tricks by Lu Ping, and he seemed to be at his wits' end. Both sides fought for a while, but Lu Ping's pair of flying swords were not any weaker than Hanya Laozu's. Although the amethyst ice jade and the 2 spirit treasures were both second calamity spirit treasures, they were completely suppressed by the fierce attacks of the 2 spirit treasures. Even if Hanya Laozu originally had an advantage in terms of his level of practice, with the help of the natal Genchen formation, not only was it negated by the geographical advantage, but after a long time, it began to restrict Hanya Laozu's abilities. The 12 Genchen pearls had gradually become the deciding factor in the battle between the 2 sides. Hanya Laozu's protective treasures and magical powers were repeatedly destroyed by the Genchen pearls, and his other tricks were constantly suppressed by Lu Ping, causing him to gradually become powerless. Naturally, Hanya Laozu would not give up just like that. With a loud roar, a white-furred ice tiger broke through his chest and forcefully squeezed out of the core space. Then, its body expanded, and a giant tiger Dharma power, 10 feet tall and 30 feet long, crouched behind Hanya Laozu. Its gaze was so intense that it could be said that it was like a tiger eyeing its prey. Lu Ping suddenly took a step back, and a sharp whistling sound swept in front of him. The giant tail, which was 15 feet long, swept silently towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping, who was hundreds of feet away, had no choice but to avoid it. However, although Lu Ping avoided it, he coincidentally smashed into a Gentian pearl, causing the 5-colored light of the Gentian pearl to scatter. It rolled all the way and almost flew out of the formation. Although the Ice Tiger Dharma Power's sudden attack caught Lu Ping off guard, and Hanya Laozu's strength had obviously doubled after summoning the Dharma Power, the moment the Gentian pearl was sent flying, the pair of purple jade bracelets and the purple jade mysterious ice essence jade ring, which had been suppressed by Lu Ping, immediately broke free from the entanglement of the thin water-flowing sword and the two-break sword. The pair of purple jade bracelets fused into the forelimbs of the Dharma Power Ice Tiger, and the jade ring was imprinted on the king symbol on the Ice Tiger's forehead. The giant tiger suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed Hanya Laozu's body into the belly of the Dharma Power Ice image. Lu Ping's expression was solemn, and his figure retreated rapidly, but the Dharma Power Ice image did not press forward. Instead, it suddenly raised its left forelimb and swung it. The Netherwater sword, which had hidden in front of the Dharma Power Ice image and had been waiting for a lightning-fast strike, let out a mournful wail. The entire sword bent into the shape of a bow and was directly sent flying out of the Gentian formation. The ferocious tiger's forelimbs bent and its hind limbs kicked, and its huge body suddenly pounced forward. The two-break sword of Mantis used a scissor kill, and 2 sky-piercing blade lights cut towards the neck of the Dharma Power Ice image. However, the giant tiger suddenly opened its forelimbs and pointed to the left and right. The 2 blade lights, which even a second tribulation spiritual treasure, the purple jade mysterious ice essence jade ring, had to retreat in the face of the Dharma Power Ice image's forelimbs. The thin water unstoppable sword took the opportunity to stab at the eyes of the Dharma Power Ice image. However, the king character on the forehead of the giant tiger was glowing, and a pair of flying swords began to condense a thick layer of ice in mid-air. Finally, they fell to the ground with a clang. The 12 Gentian pearls changed into various offensive magical powers, such as killing God, suppressing mountain, and treading the sea. However, before they could get close to the Dharma Power Ice image, they were all sent flying by the giant tail. For a moment, Lu Ping used all his means, but he could do nothing to the Dharma Power Ice image. The Dharma Power Ice image suddenly fell to the ground, and its forelimbs, which could split a spiritual treasure in two, immediately tore at the white jade lotus formation on the ground. At this time, Hanya Laozu also realized that if he wanted to completely defeat Lu Ping, he had to break the strange formation space, and to break this formation space, the white jade lotus formation under Lu Ping's feet was the key. Unless Lu Ping put away the white jade lotus formation at this time, the natal Gentian formation would basically be broken. Even if there were still 12 Gentian pearls, but without the formation, the Gentian pearls would be completely controlled by Lu Ping's divine thoughts, and their power would be greatly reduced. Seeing that the formation could not be intact under the Dharma Power Ice image's tearing, a strange roar suddenly sounded, and 2 giant claws like crocodile legs and eagle claws stretched out in mid-air, colliding with the front limbs of the Dharma Power Ice image. With a Kailar sound that made people's hair stand on end, the surrounding space was crushed and torn, and the huge force even directly tore a huge space crack. The giant tiger was suddenly thrown away by a huge force, and in the end, it returned without achieving anything, but the white jade lotus was safe and sound. The natal Gentian formation still firmly trapped Hanya Laozu in the formation, and in the purple and gold Dharma Power Ice image floating above Lu Ping's head, a strange dragon with scales and claws occasionally circled in the Dharma Power Ice image. A strange but obviously provocative roar came from the cloud, making the Dharma Power Ice image on the other side uneasy. Chapter 1169. What kind of Dharma power was this? A look of fear flashed across Hanya Laozu's face, not because of the strange Dharma power hovering above Lu Ping's head, but because of the tyrannical strength that the Dharma power had displayed when it was wrestling with his ice tiger Dharma power. The giant tiger, who had survived 2 thunder tribulations, did not gain the slightest advantage over this strange Dharma power. In fact, the strange Dharma power even gave Hanya Laozu a feeling of longing for more. Outside the natal Zhenchen formation, the Longhuai ancestor was now standing on the tallest of the 16 giant trees in the distance, looking at the void in front of him that was sealed by the natal Zhenchen formation. Even a person like the Longhuai ancestor could not see what was happening in the void sealed by the formation. He could only vaguely feel that something strange was affecting him. A look of confusion flashed across his dull expression from time to time. Obviously, he did not understand what was happening in the formation space. The 16 giant trees under the feet of the Longhuai ancestor still formed a huge cage. Obviously, the 11 heirs of the Holy Land were still trapped in the formation. Looking at the expression of the Longhuai ancestor at this time, it was obvious that he did not care about it. The Dharma power giant tiger was restless. It walked around the purple-gold auspicious cloud from afar, but still did not dare to take the initiative to move forward. The golden auspicious cloud suddenly rolled towards the ice tiger. From time to time, the body of the strange Dharma power could be seen from the auspicious cloud. However, Hanya Laozu could not see the whole appearance of the strange Dharma power. The giant tiger Dharma power suddenly abandoned the strange Dharma power and rushed towards the body of Lu Ping, who was still in the lotus formation. Unexpectedly, it had only moved a few feet when it suddenly felt its body tighten. The strange Dharma power's tail had easily broken through the protective light around the giant tiger Dharma power and hit the body of the Dharma power. The giant tiger Dharma power cried out in pain, and its huge body was immediately whipped away. However, at this moment, the giant tiger Dharma power swung its tail violently, shattering the space in its path as it went towards Lu Ping's body. The cloud sail soared into the sky. This attack, which could shatter space itself, only caused the cloud sail to tremble slightly. The thin stream sword suddenly shot back into the Dharma power's auspicious cloud. Then, the eagle claw with a layer of light golden crocodile legs reached out again and pressed towards the Dharma power giant tiger from afar. Above the head of the Dharma power giant tiger, a huge claw suddenly stretched out from midair and pressed down on the head of the giant tiger. The giant tiger suddenly rushed forward, but the giant claw that had been dodged still broke through the air. The giant tiger suddenly opened its mouth and shouted. Along the way, there was a creaking sound. The giant claw was obviously frozen, and then with a crack, it shattered. The giant tiger roared at the strange Dharma power's auspicious cloud. Then, it sacrificed itself and rushed towards the strange Dharma power. The strange Dharma power giant tiger was not afraid. The spirit treasure was broken in two and disappeared into the auspicious cloud. At the same time, it also rushed towards the giant tiger. The body of a snake, the legs of a crocodile, the tail of a carp, the antlers of a deer, the ears of a cow, the manner of a horse, the eyes of an eagle, and the claws of an eagle. This strange Dharma power of the flood dragon was a combination of 7 bloodline characteristic. When Hanya Laozu finally got a glimpse of Lu Ping's Dharma power, there was a look of surprise in his eyes. Then, there was a feeling of fear in his heart. The strange flood dragon suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a huge bead. The bead suddenly lit up, and a strong pure yang aura suddenly emanated from the bead. The Dharma power giant tiger that was rushing towards it let out a painful roar, as if countless fine needles had pierced through its skin. This was a pure yang bead. This was a pure yang bead that was completely condensed from pure yang qi. The chill in Hanya Laozu's heart became even colder. He had already gone through the second thunder tribulation, and he could only refine and absorb pure yang qi bit by bit. How would he dare to swallow a bead that was completely condensed from pure yang qi into the belly of the Dharma power giant tiger? Wouldn't that completely melt the entire Dharma power giant tiger? However, before Hanya Laozu could feel too much emotion in his heart, the dragon Dharma power giant tiger had already rushed towards the ice tiger Dharma power giant tiger. The dragon Dharma power giant tiger's 2 claws tore off 2 balls of essence qi. The Dharma power giant tiger itself was condensed from a cultivator's essence qi. After going through the thunder tribulation, this essence chi became even more spiritual. At the same time, it began to merge with the cultivator's divine will. The dragon Dharma power giant tiger made the first move. It tore off 2 balls of essence chi from the ice tiger Dharma power giant tiger. Hanya Laozu immediately felt a piercing pain in his heart. The ice tiger roared, and its 2 front claws reached towards the dragon Dharma power giant tiger's body. At the same time, it opened its mouth wide, waiting for the 2 front claws to grab the dragon Dharma power giant tiger and bite it. Whoosh! The ice tiger's front claws plucked off a layer of fine scales from the dragon Dharma power's body, but in the end, it did not manage to bind the dragon Dharma power. The ice tiger let out another cry of pain. The layer of scales that had been plucked off was actually a layer of sword light condensed from countless sword lights. It was not the essence of the dragon Dharma power at all. The dragon Dharma power seized the opportunity to break free from the ice tiger's grasp. It swept its front claws and slapped the ice tiger's open mouth to the side. It then grabbed a few more profound chi from the ice tiger's face, but this time, the dragon Dharma power did not gain much of an advantage. The origin essence that had been grabbed suddenly froze one of the Dharma form's front claws. Fortunately, the Dharma form had reacted in time. A layer of scales on the front claws fell off, but they turned into pieces of scattered sword light. Then, they turned into drops of pure spirit chi and dissipated. At the same time, the sword intent contained within them also dissipated. The dragon Dharma power turned around in mid-air and slammed into the ice tiger's forehead. The ice tiger's forehead suddenly shone with a cold light. It was not afraid, but the 2 antlers on the top of the dragon Dharma power's head suddenly shot out a blade light. Impressively, the spirit chi had already merged with the spirit treasure. The ice tiger cried out in alarm, but at this time, it was too late to dodge. The 2 Dharma powers suddenly collided in mid-air, followed by a painful roar. Countless profound chi was flowing out of the ice tiger's forehead, and the dragon Dharma power was also pushed back dozens of feet by the collision. Although the ice tiger's forehead was protected by the amethyst mysterious ice essence jade ring, it still seemed weak in front of the spirit treasure. The layer of ice that was used to protect the ice tiger was hit and cut by the antlers. The sharp pain caused the tiger Dharma power to retreat and shake its head, as if trying to shake off the pain from its mind. A Dharma power that had passed the second thunder tribulation should have a more powerful Dharma power. The Dharma power should have bred a richer pure yang chi, and this pure yang chi was a sign of the Dharma power's growth. It was like an adult bullying a minor. However, the situation now was exactly the opposite. The adult found that the minor in front of him already had a strong physique that was not weaker than his strength. The only difference was that he had not reached the age that marked adulthood. However, when this minor reached the age of an adult, how much would he grow? Without waiting for the ice tiger Dharma power to recover from the violent impact, the pure yang pearl, which was suspended in mid-air and had been using the pure yang chi to wear down the ice tiger Dharma power's profound yuan, suddenly fell to the ground like a meteor. With a loud clang, it smashed into the ice tiger Dharma power's forehead. There was a cracking sound, and the mighty king character on the ice tiger's forehead suddenly had a few more cracks. The ice tiger Dharma power staggered for a moment, and could not even stand steadily. Lu Ping looked at everything in front of him from the lotus array. He took advantage of the situation to activate the natal array, and the 12 Genchen pearls brought up endless waves, turning the entire array space into a vast ocean. The dragon Dharma power's power in the ocean increased by 30%, but the ice tiger Dharma power seemed to be struggling in this spiritual energy ocean. However, very soon, something that made Hanya Laozu even more afraid happened. After the strange dragon Dharma power entered the huge waves, each wave was able to wash away the profound chi from the ice tiger Dharma power. And at the same time that the profound chi was taken away, there was something else that Hanya Laozu could clearly sense, because he could already feel his own vitality being lost. Although the loss was very small, it was endless. Hanya Laozu could even clearly feel that his physical body, which was protected by the Dharma power, was constantly aging. The vast seas of Mulberry Field's technique. After Lu Ping had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, he was finally able to perfectly combine the natal Genchen array with his natal supreme power. The explosive increase in power was far beyond Lu Ping's imagination. Hanya Laozu tried to use the 1,000 miles of ice again to completely freeze the waves of spiritual qi, but he heard Lu Ping suddenly use the spirit transformation secret technique in the middle of the lotus array. Before the supreme power could take shape, it had already taken away half of its power. After the supreme power had taken shape, the dragon Dharma power only needed to turn around in the waves of spiritual qi, and most of the frozen waves of spiritual qi around the ice tiger were released. Fighting with the dragon in the ocean, any kind of Dharma power would be inferior, not to mention this was an ocean that Lu Ping had created himself. At this point, Hanya Laozu finally panicked. Although he had been at a disadvantage before, Hanya Laozu had never thought that he would be in such a difficult situation. Or rather, he had never thought that his life would be in danger. It was only when Lu Ping had perfectly combined the Sea of Mulberry Fields technique with the natal Zhenchen array that Hanya Laozu finally realized many things. This was because during the time that the spiritual Qi ocean had taken shape, he had already realized that his life had been lost for 10 years. Run, run, run. Hanya Laozu was completely terrified. However, in this void where Lu Ping controlled everything, Hanya Laozu's intentions were quickly discovered by Lu Ping. The huge waves changed again. The waves no longer washed away the vitality of the ice tiger Dharma power. Instead, they were like iron brooms, sweeping away the vitality of the ice tiger Dharma power. The waves suddenly turned into huge waves of sword light. There was no escape, but the path of death was already slowly unfolding in front of Hanya Laozu. Chapter 1170. The Dharma form giant tiger leaped out of the sea, and Hanya Laozu also flew out of the giant tiger's belly. Riding on the giant tiger, they headed straight for the void that Lu Ping had sealed. At this time, Hanya Laozu did not even hesitate to damage his foundation, and pay the price of no further progress in the future. He wanted to escape from the natal Zhenchen formation. He was afraid. However, the 12 stars were close at hand, but he could not reach the edge. Hanya Laozu was suddenly shocked. He was already in a mess, but he did not realize that he was being controlled by Lu Ping's magical power. Hanya Laozu stopped the flying Dharma form and was about to move, but he suddenly felt that his whole body was stagnant. Not only could his body no longer move, but the real essence in his body was also sealed in an instant. A white light from the White Lotus formation illuminated the entire Zhenchen formation, and the Dharma form of the dragon had blocked in front of him. Hanya Laozu shouted, and a blood arrow suddenly shot out from his chest. A snow-white handkerchief unfolded from the blood arrow, and a dazzling light suddenly suppressed the waves of spiritual qi in the formation. Even the Dharma form of the dragon in front of him was shocked by the terrifying aura emitted from the handkerchief and did not dare to move forward. However, it was only a shock. This handkerchief might have something that frightened the Dharma form of the dragon, but obviously, Hanya Laozu could not activate it. Otherwise, he would not have used this treasure when he was beaten so badly by Lu Ping. The heaven-opening relic. Lu Ping's first reaction was that this snow-white handkerchief wrapped by Hanya Laozu's blood must be the heaven-opening relic that caused the cultivation world to be in an uproar. However, at this time, Lu Ping had finally trapped Hanya Laozu, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Lu Ping could not care less about the heaven-opening relic. Hanya Laozu used this hidden handkerchief in his body to shock the fatal attack of Lu Ping's Dharma form of the dragon in one fell swoop. However, Lu Ping's methods were never unique. Just as Hanya Laozu took the opportunity to shake the real essence in his body, trying to break free from the white light, he suddenly felt a chill in his back. Hanya Laozu's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. When he looked down, the invisible flying sword that had been hit by the Ice Tiger Dharma form had unexpectedly sneaked back to Hanya Laozu's side. At this time, this attack was aimed at Hanya Laozu's vital point. The white light collapsed, and Hanya Laozu roared and finally broke free. However, his heart was pierced, and the core space collapsed instantly. This was a fatal injury. Patriarch Frigid Leaf was on the brink of death, and yet he still had a way to fight back. The collapse of his core space would usually kill his Dharma idol along with it. But right now, the Tiger Dharma idol was right beneath him. The tiger let out a roar, as if it knew that death was inevitable. It began to swell up like a balloon, and in the blink of an eye, it was about to burst out of the spell formation. Hanya Laozu was going to self-destruct, and he was going to perish together with his opponent. However, Lu Ping had painstakingly obtained this opportunity to kill his opponent. How could he let it go to waste just like that? Lu Ping suddenly patted his chest, and a wine cauldron rose up. Linglong's wine cauldron, another spiritual treasure. Lu Ping suddenly patted the body of the wine cauldron, and this time, Linglong jumped out of the wine cauldron and floated in the air. Then the whole giant cauldron began to spin rapidly under Linglong's body, and it spun faster and faster. A huge spiritual vortex suddenly communicated with the expanding ice tiger Dharma form, and it sucked back into the wine cauldron. Qiankuan wine cauldron, you actually have a replica of the heaven-opening artifact. Hanya Laozu roared in despair and anger, but at this time, all that was left was a little of Hanya Laozu's spiritual will. His physical body had collapsed, and his death was inevitable. It was difficult for him to control the Dharma form at this time. The huge tiger Dharma form seemed sluggish and clumsy. After the wine cauldron continued to absorb spiritual energy, it did not know how to resist, and its huge body suddenly began to shrink. Explode! 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 Hanya Laozu, who had gone completely crazy, roared with the last of his strength in an attempt to detonate the entire ice tiger Dharma form. However, his voice was getting lower and lower, and gradually, it was almost inaudible, but the crazy obsession before death became stronger and stronger. At this time, the dragon Dharma form suddenly suspended the pure yang pearl in mid-air, and it was as if a huge sun was hanging in the Genshen space. The giant tiger Dharma idol was, after all, a great cultivator who had survived 2 lightning tribulations. The pure yang energy contained in the Dharma idol was no weaker than that of the dragon Dharma idol. At that moment, strands of pure yang energy were being stripped from the Dharma idol's body and gathered in the pure yang pearl that was suspended in mid-air. Boom! In the end, the ice tiger Dharma form exploded, but after being weakened by the Linglong wine cauldron and the pure yang pearl, the power of the explosion had been greatly reduced. However, this was, after all, a great cultivator who was risking his life. The exploding ice tiger Dharma form wreaked havoc in the space of the Genshen formation. The hanging cloud sail firmly protected Lu Ping's body, and the moment the dragon Dharma form exploded, it had already rushed into Lu Ping's core space with the pure yang pearl in its mouth. And before it returned to the core space, the dragon Dharma form's long tail curled up, and took the snow-white handkerchief with it into the core space. The lotus formation and the 12 Genshen pearls echoed from afar, trying their best to suppress the damage caused by the explosion. However, in the process of the Genshen pearls flickering, the Genshen formation could no longer maintain the integrity of the formation. The 12 Genshen pearls were shaken away, and the white lotus formation dimmed for a while, bursting in all directions. The natal Genshen formation was broken in the end. Just before the Genshen formation was broken, Lu Ping reacted quickly and grabbed the 2 purple jade bracelets that flew out from the Dharma form. These 2 spiritual treasures were really good items. Of course, the better one was the jade ring. At the same time, the jade ring that was originally inlaid on the forehead of the ice tiger was also broken into several pieces and flew out. Lu Ping did not hesitate to leave the protection of the White Lotus formation and rushed into the center of the explosion with the cloud sail. He snatched the broken pieces of purple jade ice essence from the jade ring. Although the Grade 2 spiritual treasure jade ring had been completely destroyed and the spirit in it had also been annihilated, the purple jade ice essence itself was a first-class spiritual material in the cultivation world. Lu Ping was unwilling to let it be destroyed in the explosion. Unfortunately, the storage magical device on Hanya Laozu was destroyed by the power of the explosion before he could get it. Most of the things inside were destroyed along with the collapse of the storage magical device. A few lucky ones that were not destroyed were also shaken away by the power of the explosion. Lu Ping flew back quickly, but in the end, he was still affected by the explosion. He could no longer suppress the boiling blood in his body. A mouthful of hot blood splashed out from his mouth. In less than a foot, it turned into blood-red ice crystals and fell to the ground. The shockwaves from the self-detonation spread out in all directions, causing the temperature within a radius of several hundred meters to plummet. The ground that had already been ravaged by Patriarch Frigid Leaf's 1,000-kilometer icebound divine ability was now covered with a layer of frost. Lu Ping coughed loudly and tried to collect the things that were shaken away. However, there were only a few dozen of them. He roughly looked at them, and the quality was also uneven. It could be said that Hanya Laozu had planned to break out of the Northern Alliance for a long time. God knew how much of the treasures that the Northern Alliance had accumulated for thousands of years had been collected before he left. Even though he did not bring all of them with him because the treasure ship was suddenly destroyed, he was probably much richer than people like Nanu Laozu. It was a pity that this explosion had destroyed countless treasures. Lu Ping did not even care about his own injuries. "You really killed that Hanya?" Lu Ping had actually already noticed the Longhuai ancestor in the distance. At this time, hearing his slightly surprised question, Lu Ping could not help but ask, "Why? Does Senior think that I am no match for that Hanya?" The Longhuai ancestor actually nodded and said, "Indeed. Although your strength is not bad, the old man does not think that you have the strength to kill a late Dharma adept. Especially that Hanya is not considered weak among the late Dharma adepts. I originally thought that you would at most be evenly matched with him, or even at a disadvantage. In fact, the old man had already prepared to attack at any time, but I really did not expect you to really have such strength." This was not false. During the time when Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu were fighting, Lu Ping did indeed notice that the Longhuai ancestor was watching his own life Zhenchen space. The aura around him was indeed as if he was ready to attack at any time. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "In fact, this battle of mine was really dangerous. Victory or defeat was decided in a split second, and it was obvious that my luck was not bad." The Longhuai ancestor nodded and said, "Your formation is really impressive." Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything else. The Longhuai ancestor's eyes were like torches. Lu Ping had revealed too many of his trump cards in this battle, and he did not know how much he had already noticed. Lu Ping casually released Dabao and said, "Many treasures have been lost. How much you find will depend on your ability." Dabao had seen the Longhuai ancestor before. Naturally, he knew that the person in front of him was an existence that should not be provoked. He hurriedly bowed to the Longhuai ancestor and hurriedly ran towards the forest. He had indeed discovered the aura of many treasures. Lu Ping thought for a moment and also summoned Lu Xiaoping. He ordered him to chase after Dabao and protect him. Although the battle between Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu was covered by the Life Zhenchen formation, Hanya Laozu's self-explosion caused a great commotion. Although this place was remote, it was inevitable that it would attract the attention of cultivators, so it was better to be cautious. When the Longhuai ancestor saw Lu Xiaoping, he naturally knew that it was refined from the 8,000-year-old willow tree that he had gifted to Lu Ping. He smiled and said, "This child is not bad, and the person who refined it is also quite talented." Lu Ping smiled and said, "It was refined by one of my junior brothers. He is quite talented in the Tao of puppets." After receiving the inheritance of Senior's avatar, he became even more like a fish in water. Junior has to thank Senior on behalf of my junior brother. As Lu Ping said this, he took out a snow-white silk handkerchief from his clothes and said, "Junior obtained this from Hanya Laozu. I wonder if this is the item that Senior left behind in the past." The Longhuai ancestor glanced at it and said indifferently, "Yes, it is. Just keep it. This item may be precious, but it is of no use to the old man. Just don't let it fall into the hands of the 6 holy lands." Chapter 1171. Previously, the Longhuai ancestor had already expressed that he would not take back this relic. He just did not want it to fall into the hands of the 6 holy lands. Lu Ping did not act pretentiously. After thanking him, he put the silk handkerchief back into his lapel. In fact, he kept it in the core space. Previously, when the dragon avatar avoided Hanya Laozu's self-destruction, it did not forget to bring this silk handkerchief into the core space. Lu Ping already knew that this silk handkerchief would be of great benefit to him. This time, he took it out of caution. After all, this item originally belonged to the Longhuai ancestor. Although the Longhuai ancestor had said that he did not want this item, if Lu Ping kept this treasure without saying anything, it would be somewhat unreasonable. After just a cup of tea's time, the Longhuai ancestor's expression changed. I'm afraid that someone will come soon. The old man will go first. Don't be greedy for small gains. You should also leave quickly. Lu Ping nodded and suddenly stamped his foot. A faint wave spread out from the ground. Only then did Lu Ping raise his head and ask, "Senior, are you going back to the East China Sea?" The Longhuai ancestor shook his head. The old man has been trapped in the secret perished land for tens of thousands of years. This time, it was not easy to get out of the fence. Naturally, I want to travel the world and experience the atmosphere of the cultivation world. Lu Ping smiled. Then I hope that Senior can return to the cultivation world with joy. At the same time, I also hope that Senior can get out of the fence as soon as possible. The Longhuai ancestor smiled and said, "No matter what, the old man cannot break through the myriad poison heavenly wall. He can only rely on external forces. Don't forget what you promised the old man. If one day you have the ability to break through the myriad poison heavenly wall, you must help the old man." Lu Ping said solemnly, "I dare not forget." While they were talking, they heard Dabao running over in the distance. Lu Xiaohai, who was sitting on his shoulder, grabbed Dabao's ear tightly. As Dabao ran, Lu Xiaohai giggled, which surprised Longhuai ancestor. Dabao shouted, "Boss, why did you call me? Although there are not many treasures scattered in this forest, their quality is not bad. I have only collected a small part of them." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Forget it. Let's not look for the rest. Someone is already coming. We should leave first." Dabao was very disappointed. He was reluctant, but he also knew that the people coming would definitely be the cultivators of the Holy Land. He was afraid that there would be some great cultivators among them. If they were caught, not to mention the collected treasures, even their lives would be in danger. The Longhuai ancestor said, "There are treasures in the handkerchief. There are some magical powers hidden in it. If you want to understand it, it depends on whether you have the ability to understand it." Just now, the old man noticed that although this thing has been abandoned for thousands of years, it is probably because of its identity as a heaven-opening relic. It has not been comprehended by anyone. The things inside are still intact. The Longhuai ancestor paused. He seemed to want to continue, so he said fiercely, "What a waste." Lu Ping couldn't guess the meaning of the Longhuai ancestor, so he could only remain silent. The Longhuai ancestor said, "The old man has left several heaven-opening relics or other inheritances outside in the past tens of thousands of years. It was for the sake of someone finding a way to break the sky wall of myriad poisons in the future, allowing the old man to escape from the shackles. Unfortunately, no one has been able to do it. The Longhuai ancestor might be a giant locust tree, but it was trapped in the sky wall of myriad poisons for tens of thousands of years." Lu Ping could naturally imagine the loneliness. If it was really because of this, the Longhuai ancestor's mood could be understood by Lu Ping. But when he thought of the possible hidden connection between the Longhuai ancestor and Jiao Daoren, even Lu Ping didn't dare to look too deeply into the reason. Seeing that the Longhuai ancestor was about to leave, Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and asked, "Does Senior know Xiao Baiyu?" Ancestor Longhuai's identity came to an abrupt halt, and then he turned around and said with a smile, "I know what you want to ask. Since I entered the cultivation world this time, I've heard many shocking legends about this person. Moreover, I've witnessed his divine might in the past, and he can really be considered to be an extraordinary genius. However, this person isn't related to me at all. Moreover, if you attain the pure yang realm in the future, then your strength might not necessarily be inferior to him." The Longhuai ancestor stretched out his hand and beckoned. 15 of the 16 giant trees jumped out of them. Avatars that were about the same size as Lu Xiaoping jumped out. After these avatars came out, they pounced on the Longhuai ancestor and disappeared. After these 15 avatars appeared from the giant trees, the originally silent giant tree cage suddenly exploded with a deafening roar. Longhuai waved his hand at Lu Ping, and then he vanished. Lu Ping's divine sense was outstanding, but he could only vaguely sense that the Longhui ancestor seemed to be using the boundless forest to cast a magic power similar to the wood escape technique. However, this magic power was far superior to the wood escape technique. Lu Ping glanced at the giant tree cage. He could see that the Longhui ancestor had actually drawn all the spiritual energy veins in the vicinity to this place. Moreover, the giant tree's formation was also very mysterious. Although the 15 avatars were no longer used as Dao soldiers, it would not be easy for the 11 heirs to break out of the giant tree cage in a short time. In the past, Jiao Daoren was famous throughout the entire cultivation world for his expertise in formations. He was even called the ancestor of formations by the cultivation world. Lu Ping thought to himself. After the Longhui ancestor left, Lu Ping also cast a magic power and turned into a stream of water that merged with the clouds in the sky. He then disappeared. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 2 streams of light from the east and west of the sky arrived first. The 2 streams of light dispersed, and a great Dharma adept walked out from each of them. They were the great adepts from the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion who were closest to this place. When the 2 great adepts saw the giant tree cage and heard that the heirs who were trapped within it were attacking the formation, the 2 of them actually did not make a move to rescue them. Instead, they walked towards the other side of the battlefield. This was naturally the place where Lu Ping and Hanya Laozu had fought previously. After Hanya Laozu's 1,000 miles of ice supreme magic power and his final self-destruction, this place had long been a mess. It's Hanya's 1,000 miles of ice. Looks like he's done for. Hanya Laozu had obviously fought with someone here, but the 11 heirs from the 5 Holy Lands were still trapped in the formation. This could only mean that Hanya Laozu had been defeated, captured, or killed. Otherwise, he would not have allowed these heirs to be trapped here. Following closely behind, the people from the 9 Shen Tower also arrived. They were also great adepts. When they saw that the 2 did not make a move to rescue their juniors, they naturally understood what the 2 were thinking. However, they also walked around the place where Hanya Laozu had fought. When they returned, they said, "What do the 2 of you think?" Without waiting for the 2 from the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion to answer, the great adepts from the Wuxing School and the Xiang Palace also arrived. Putting aside the other 4 Laozus, when the great adepts from the Wuxing School arrived, their faces were full of anger. Soon, everyone knew the reason. Hanya had died. This news also shocked the other 4 great adepts. Now that Hanya Laozu was obviously a member of the Wuxing School, which force would be bold enough to attack Hanya? These people had never thought that Hanya Laozu had died in the hands of one person. Usually, to kill a great adepts with a solid foundation like Hanya Laozu, at least 3 adepts of the same level were needed. Even if they had set up an ambush, it would not be easy for adepts of the same level to kill Hanya Laozu. At least, the 5 great adepts from the Holy Lands who were present did not have much confidence in doing so. So, the heaven-opening relic is also lost. The great adepts from the Wuxing School looked gloomy, but he still nodded and said, "It is very likely lost. Our Wuxing School will definitely take revenge for this, and we will definitely get the heaven-opening relic back. By the way, can the heaven-opening relic really make up for the defect of the water-breaking branch?" The great adepts from the Wuxing School hesitated for a moment, but he still nodded and said, "Indeed, junior brother Hanya found that the handkerchief contained the essence of the water-breaking branch, which could be used to replace the 2 halves of the spirit treasure. Moreover, there was also Jiao Daren's handwriting on the handkerchief, which seemed to contain something. Unfortunately, junior brother Hanya could not extract the essence of the water-breaking branch from it, nor could he learn anything from Jiao Daren's handwriting. However, when he thought about what happened to Xiao Baiyu, he wanted to bring it back to the sect, so, at the mention of Xiao Baiyu, it was the great adepts from the Xiang Palace's turn to look unhappy. He snorted heavily and said, "This time, we went for wool and came home shorn." The 5 great adepts were silent. Originally, the 5 Holy Lands wanted to use the heaven-opening relic to surround and kill Xiao Baiyu, but unexpectedly, their plan to surround and kill Xiao Baiyu on the Qingming River failed. The Wuxing School lost a great adepts, and the heaven-opening relic also disappeared. Later, the heirs of each sect who participated in this mission originally had the chance to learn the handwriting of Jiao Daoren, but now they did not have the chance. With a whistling sound of swords, the cage of the giant tree was broken. The sky was filled with sword lights like stars, and even the light of the day could not dim them. Su Jin and Guo Wanxing were the first to break through the giant tree's formation, and they killed their way out. The 6 supreme sword techniques of the Xiang Palace, Starry Sky Sword Technique, Chaotic Star Sword Technique, sword cultivators were indeed the existence with the most tyrannical attacks. Su Jin and Guo Wanxing cooperated with each other, and the power of the 2 supreme sword techniques was even stronger. They were the first to break through the giant tree fence. However, after the 2 of them rushed out, they were on guard, as if they were ready to attack at any time. But soon, the 2 of them were stunned. The 5 great adepts, including their seniors from the Xiang Palace, were looking at the 2 of them coldly. Their eyes were filled with great dissatisfaction. What was going on? Before the 2 of them could figure out the reason, another long whistle was heard. Wuxing School's Mu Changsheng had finally broken through the giant tree's cage with the help of his deep attainments in the wood attribute cultivation method. Senior brothers from the Xiang Palace, the person who set up this formation is far stronger than us. Let us practice first. A disciple greets the 5 Laozu. Chapter 1172. After leaving the forest, Lu Ping took a big detour from afar before heading towards the Qingming River where the Northern Alliance's treasured ship had anchored earlier. By the time Lu Ping returned, the battle had already ended. The Northern Alliance's treasured ship on the Qingming River had already disappeared without a trace. Laozu, the pure yang in the sky, had also disappeared without a trace. Mara's army and the Dharma adepts of the various sects had also disappeared without a trace. Because of the flow of the river, there were no longer any traces of the previous battle on the surface of the river. Only the fallen trees on both sides of the river could prove that there had indeed been a huge battle that shocked the entire world of practitioners. Lu Ping went around the Qingming River and came to the small hill where he had previously hidden. 2 figures also appeared from the void. It was Tian Tian and Liu Tianyuan, the 2 Zhenling Dharma adepts. Between the 2 of them, Lu Ping's expression could not help but change. Tian Tian said, "Are you injured?" They had a rough idea of Lu Ping's strength. Among the adepts of the same level, unless they were surrounded and attacked by multiple people, it would not be easy to injure Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's no big deal. It's just a normal injury. I'll recover in about 1 or 2 months." Lu Ping saw that although the 2 of them were not injured, they looked slightly tired. It was obvious that the previous battle on the Qingming River had not been easy. However, the 2 of them had a look of excitement in their eyes. It was obvious that the 2 of them had already snatched the treasured ship during the battle with Mara's army and had gained something from it. Lu Ping smiled and asked, "It seems that the 2 of you have gained a lot from the treasured ship." Liu Tianyuan smiled and said, "It was a worthwhile trip." This time, besides the Northern Alliance adepts, the rest of the army that attacked Mara's army were mostly adepts from various sects. They obviously valued the treasures that the Northern Alliance adepts had hidden on the treasured ship and did not care about the ship itself. This actually allowed the 2 of us to take advantage of it. I snatched 2 masts, and Senior Tian Tian found 2.5 sails. Lu Ping's eyes lit up and he said, "These Dharma adepts of the Central Plains are really blind. How can the masts and sails on the treasured ship be made up of ordinary treasures? All of them are natural treasures. The 2 of you have gained a lot. Just the masts and sails alone made this trip worthwhile. Our sect's treasured ship will definitely be repaired much faster." Tian Tian was still a little dispirited and said, "It's a pity that there are still some people who know what's good. After we snatched the masts and sails, it was obvious that the overseas adepts also joined in. Everything on the treasured ship and even the ship itself began to be snatched. Some even attacked everything on the ship. Anything that could be smashed down was collected. We no longer have a chance." Lu Ping smiled and said, "This is already considered not bad. If the 2 of you had snatched too much, I'm afraid you would have become a thorn in the other party's side. At that time, the consequences would only be more serious. That's true. The two of them could not help but laugh. Lu Ping thought of something and pointed to the sky. He said, "What was the result of the battle between the pure young Laozu?" The two of them could not help but reveal a strange and shocked expression. In the end, it was Liu Qianyuan who said, after junior brother left, another pure young Laozu attacked. Ah! This time, even Lu Ping was shocked. He said, 9 pure young Laozu? Since when did the pure young Laozu become so worthless in the world of cultivation? Liu Qianyuan said, the last Laozu that attacked seemed to be extremely excited. He had not even entered the cloudy space, but with just one strike, he broke up the battle of the pure young Laozu. After that, the Laozu dispersed. Dispersed? Just one strike and it was scattered. Tian Tian then explained, that strike did indeed disperse everyone, but then these Laozu left separately in different directions. Only the pure young Laozu that came later seemed to be chasing after Xiao Baiyu's escape light towards the east. Lu Ping really could not figure out the mystery. Could it be that the person who came later was an existence that was higher than everyone else? Could it be that he was able to shock the 8 pure young Laozu in one fell swoop? Then what was the existence that was higher than the pure young Laozu? Even Lu Ping didn't dare to think about it any further. If he had been there at that time, he might have been able to use the 3 pure eyes to see something. Unfortunately, he was not there at that time, so naturally he did not know the situation at that time. However, after the pure young Laozu left, it was obvious that they realized that no one could do anything to the other. The 5 Holy Lands could not kill Xiao Baiyu, so this plan naturally fell through. Xiao Baiyu could not pass the 5 pure young Laozu, so naturally, they could not obtain the treasure of opening the heavens. Naturally, they would not make any more useless efforts. Lu Ping did not dwell on this, so he asked, what about the Mara army and the treasure ship? Tian Tian said, in today's battle, there were dozens of Dharma adepts gathered on the Qingming River. When they attacked together, Mara's army was completely destroyed, and the treasure ship was robbed until only an empty shell was left. After that, it was taken away by the people of the Skyward Pavilion. The rest of the practitioners naturally would not provoke the Skyward Pavilion. Lu Ping said curiously, the Lingyun Valley should be the closest to here. Why did they let the people of the Skyward Pavilion take away the treasure ship? Liu Qianyuan said, the Lingyun Valley must be having a headache now. Magic Cloud City was attacked by the Mara army, and less than 10% of the practitioners in Magic Cloud City survived. After that, Peacock Royalty took the opportunity to lead the Endless Mountain Demon Clan to expel the Mara army in Magic Cloud City and occupy it. Now, the Endless Mountain Demon Clan may even want to build the Magic Cloud City there. How can the Lingyun Valley take care of it? Magic Cloud City could be regarded as a subsidiary force of the Lingyun Valley, and it was also a very important stronghold. It was a key link in the cooperation between the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion to prevent the Endless Mountain Demon Clan from penetrating into the central mainland. Now, Peacock Royalty had seized the opportunity to occupy Magic Cloud City, and the reason why Peacock Royalty had given them was so reasonable. After all, Mara had been expelled from Magic Cloud City. Unless the Lingyun Valley and the Skyward Pavilion wanted to forcibly start a war with the Endless Mountain Demon Clan, they would never give up Magic Cloud City. Lu Ping looked at the 2 senior martial brothers and asked, Senior martial brothers, what do you plan to do next? Liu Qianyuan said, we have to go back to the sky-filling courtyard first and inform the sect of what happened here. We also have to return the masts and sails of these treasure ships to the sect. Tian Tian said, after that, we have to travel to the cultivation world of the central mainland again. The central mainland is vast, and the knowledge gained from this trip to the Green Netherworld River is far greater than that of being confined in the North Sea. Liu Qianyuan said, Junior martial brother, aren't you going back to the North Sea? Lu Ping shook his head and said, I still have a remarkable power to learn, and it's a critical moment now. I still have to drift on the Green Netherworld River for a while. Both of them had looks of envy on their faces. When the 2 of them had advanced to the Dharma stage, they had each learned a great special power. Such an achievement was already considered outstanding among the Dharma adepts of Zhonling. However, They also knew how difficult the process of learning a great special power was, and how strong a practitioner's foundation was. However, this junior martial brother in front of them had trained far less than the two of them, but he had at least cultivated several great special powers, and he had even succeeded in condensing a supreme power. Now that he had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, it was unknown how many more special powers he would have. Lu Ping did not know what the two of them were thinking, but he remembered something. He stretched out his hand and opened up the space in the House of Gold. Deng Ming walked out from inside, a little confused. Seeing Deng Ming, Liu Tianyuan and Tian Tian were also stunned. Lu Ping then said, "This is junior martial brother Deng Ming, an array master that I met when I was traveling in the South Sea. Now that I've asked junior martial brother Deng Ming to join our sect, and he has already inherited our sect's array techniques. Now that the two of you are returning to the sect, you can bring junior martial brother Deng along as well." With that, he introduced Liu Tianyuan and Tian Tian to Deng Ming. When Liu Tianyuan and Tian Tian heard that Deng Ming was actually an array master, they saw a hint of joy in each other's eyes. The two of them also understood what Lu Ping meant. It was obvious that he wanted to tell them that Deng Ming was a trustworthy person, and that he could definitely participate in the repair of the treasured ship after returning to the sect. Right now, the repair of Zhenling's treasured ship had entered a critical stage. Because the sect had two tool refinement masters, Zhenling only had one array master, Daoist Shen Chen. As a result, the repair of the array formations on the treasured ship was far behind. It was not coordinated with the repair of the ship's hull, and it had even begun to hinder the repair of the ship. Tianjiang Laozu was very anxious, but he could not say much. After all, Zhenling's current foundation was still somewhat insufficient, and Tianjiang Laozu did not have much lifespan left, so he was clearly a little anxious. Now that another trustworthy array master had joined the repair of the treasured ship, Zhenling's current predicament would naturally be easily resolved, and the repair of the treasured ship would definitely be greatly increased. Deng Ming was different from Daoist Shen Chen. Perhaps Deng Ming's accumulation of knowledge in arrays was currently not as good as Daoist Xuanquan's, but Deng Ming was far younger than Daoist Shen Chen. Now, he had also received the inheritance of two top array masters in the cultivation world, and he had gained new knowledge on Kongming Island. Most importantly, he even had the possibility of entering the Dharma stage in the future. Once he accumulated enough knowledge, his future achievements would far exceed Daoist Xuanquan's, and he would definitely become the new authority of Zhenling in the field of arrays. On the surface of the river that was a few miles wide, the water of the Qingming River flowed in waves. On the back of a huge black turtle, Lu Ping leisurely enjoyed the river breeze, allowing Da Gui to swim in the Qingming River. However, at this time, although Lu Ping seemed to be leisurely, in reality, most of his attention had already been focused on the core space. To be more specific, he was focused on the snow-white handkerchief that floated above the white lotus in the core space, with the Dharma power of the dragon revolving around it. The quality of this handkerchief alone was probably many times better than the sails of the treasured ships that Tian Tian had snatched earlier. And on the lower right corner of the handkerchief, there was a colorful phoenix that was 3 inches long, looking very lively, flapping its wings as if it was about to take flight. Could it be that this handkerchief belongs to Luan Daoist? Lu Ping was suspicious, but he could not find anything on the handkerchief with his divine sense. Then where was Jiao Dairen's handwritten letter? The purple-gold eyes of the dragon Dharma power of the dragon suddenly turned blood red, and a sense of sorrow, murderousness, and heroism came rushing at him. Lu Ping, who was lying on the back of the black turtle, was shocked. Chapter 1173. The battle at Qingming River shocked the world. First, Magic Cloud City was destroyed. The entire large sect had tens of thousands of practitioners, but only a few hundred of them managed to escape. After that, less than 200 practitioners of Magic Cloud City, led by Xianyun Laozu, were annexed by Lingyun Valley. After that, the 5 pure Yang practitioners of the 5 Holy Lands set up an ambush above Qingming River to kill Xiao Baiyu. Unexpectedly, Yang Shouchang, the pure Yang practitioner of the Peacock Royalty, and Laozu of Tianxian sect came to help Xiao Baiyu. The final result was even more surprising. Xiaoyaozi of Lingyun Valley was beaten up by Yang Wangdi. Under Yang Wangdi's deliberate prank, Xiaoyaozi's hair was disheveled like a ghost. All the practitioners who gathered at Qingming River at that time saw it, and it immediately became a joke in the cultivation world. It was very embarrassing. If it was because Yang Wangdi had the 5-element spiritual light fan, then it was reasonable for Xiaoyaozi to be defeated. But when Mu Yi Laozu of Wuxing School was completely suppressed by Laozu of 7-element spiritual light fan and finally returned with injuries, everyone was shocked. Since when did the pure Yang Laozu of the 5 Holy Lands become so easy to bully? For a time, the practitioners were at a loss, and they all attributed the reason to the spirit treasures in the hands of the 2 pure Yang practitioners of Laozu. Needless to say, Yang Wangdi's 5-element spiritual light fan was a spirit treasure derived from the supreme magical power practiced by Peng Daoren in the past. The 7 spiritual fans in the hands of Laozu of 7-element spiritual light fan, which was a replica of the 7 feathers fan of Luan Daoist, also shocked the world. Legend had it that the 7 feathers fan of Luan Daoist was made from the true spirit feathers of 7 kinds of phoenix bloodlines. It was a powerful heaven-opening artifact. At the beginning of the world, the Luan Daoist used the 7 feathers fan to control the weather of the world. It was sunny, cloudy, rainy, foggy, snowy, windy, and frosty. As long as the 7 feathers fan of Luan Daoist was waved, the world would change. The 7 feathered fans in Elder 7 fans' hands could not be combined into one. Although the feathers of the 7 spirit birds all belonged to the bloodline of the Luan, 4 of them were feathers obtained from pure Yang spirit birds, while the other 3 were even worse. They were feathers obtained from 3 different spirit birds with Dharma great adepts level of cultivation. Although the Tianxian sect had spent a lot of effort on these 7 feathers over the past thousands of years, improving their quality, they were still restricted by nature. Until now, they had only survived the Second Thunder trial. Even so, the battle at the Qingming River had shocked the cultivation world with the power of the 7 feathers. Although the 7 fans could not be combined, they were a set. Even the Wuxing School's Mu Yi Laozu, who had lost to the 7 feathers fan of Laozu, had to admit afterward that even a pure Yang spirit treasure that had survived the Third Thunder trial was nothing more than this. However, the so-called pure Yang spirit treasure, of course, the main character of this battle was not these people, but the sky-splitting sword saint. Although Xiao Baiyu had the help of 2 pure Yang spirit treasures, he still had to fight 1 against 3. However, the final result did not disappoint the cultivation world. Wang Xianqing fought fiercely, but in the end, he was forced by the sword Qi. The second tribulation spirit treasure in his hand was knocked down a step, and he was also invaded by the sword Qi. After returning to the Xiang Palace, he went into seclusion and had not come out until now. The cultivation world guessed that this time, Wang Xianqing must have been seriously injured. Pure Yang Laozu's flying fork formation was also an unruly existence in the Nine Shen Tower. She had once publicly challenged the pure Yang Laozu of the Nine Shen Tower as a late Dharma practitioner. Although she had lost miserably, she was someone that no one in the Nine Shen Tower dared to provoke. This time, when she advanced to the pure Yang level, she originally wanted to use Xiao Baiyu to show off. Who would have thought that Xiao Baiyu would break the flying fork formation with 1 sword strike? This caused her to be disgraced, and she had to run back to the Nine Shen Tower with her tail between her legs. Among the 3 of them, the one who suffered the least damage was Bailey Changtian Laozu of the Skyward Pavilion. This Laozu seemed to have some friendship with Xiao Baiyu in the past. In this battle, Bailey Changtian's space magic was also broken by Xiao Baiyu, but in the end, he was able to escape unscathed and did not suffer any serious injuries. It must be known that in the beginning, Xiao Baiyu was besieged by 5 people. After the 2 pure Yang Laozu rushed over to help, Xiao Baiyu had in fact already been injured under the siege of 5 pure Yang adepts. But even so, he still managed to return victorious after fighting 1 against 3. In fact, this sky-splitting sword sage even had the time to destroy the treasured ship of the Northern Alliance with 1 sword strike. In the end, the 5 Holy Lands went for wool and came home shorn. Just as the pure Yang Laozu of the 5 Holy Lands conspired to kill Xiao Baiyu, a huge battle broke out on the 3 sky-splitting islands of the East Sea, and Skyrend almost became history. The Crystal Palace gathered 4 great adepts, 9 mid-Dharma Laozu, and a number of early Dharma adepts. Under the leadership of the pure young adept Yuan Lei Laozu, they took the opportunity to attack the 3 sky-splitting islands. Skyrend fought back. Skyrend was one of the 2 remaining great adepts. In order to resist the power of Yuan Lei Laozu's pure young power, he suddenly self-destructed while negotiating with the Crystal Palace adepts. Not only did the Crystal Palace adepts not expect this, even the adepts of Skyrend did not expect Laozu to be so violent. Because it was unexpected, the Crystal Palace was caught off guard. Including Yuan Lei Laozu, the 7 Dharma adepts of the Crystal Palace were all included in the range of Laozu's self-destruction. Yuan Lei Laozu vomited blood on the spot. Of the 2 great adepts, one was seriously injured and the other was on the verge of death. 2 mid-Dharma adepts and 2 early Dharma adepts of the 3rd generation died on the spot. The Crystal Palace was naturally angry that they had suffered such a setback before they had even made a move. However, when Skyrend saw their own Laozu self-destruct, they naturally thought that the Crystal Palace had gone too far and became even more resentful. When the Crystal Palace was still attacking the Silver Sword Island with a greater advantage, everyone in Skyrend was united in their hatred of the Crystal Palace and actually dealt damage to the Crystal Palace that was far greater than Skyrend's own damage. However, the Crystal Palace was ultimately too powerful. The Silver Sword Island quickly fell, and Skyrend retreated to the Gold Sword Island. Seeing that the Gold Sword Island was about to fall, and that Skyrend was in danger, the Green Sea Snakes suddenly intervened. Under the leadership of Chu Yunxiu, the pure young Laozu of the Wind Serpent clan, a few Dharma adepts, they formed a pincer attack with Skyrend. The situation in the East Sea cultivation world changed drastically, and the cultivators of the Crystal Palace retreated again and again. With the help of the Jade Sea Spirit Snake clan, the Sky-Splitting Sword sect had successfully reclaimed the Silver Sword Island, but the Crystal Palace had a strong start and a weak finish. In the end, they returned to the Crystal Palace with a huge loss of 1 Grand Adept, 3 Mid-Dharma Adepts, and 6 early Dharma Adepts. Among them, the Great Adept of the Crystal Palace, who was seriously injured by Elder Skyrend's self-destruct, was killed because when the Green Sea Snakes suddenly appeared, pure young Laozu and Chu Yunxiu inadvertently blew a breath of air. Unexpectedly, the heavily injured Great Adept was blown to death. However, Skyrend also suffered a huge loss. Not only did a Great Adept Elder die in battle, but even with the advantage of the island's protective formation, 2 of the mid-Dharma adepts had fallen, and 4 of the early Dharma adepts had also died. To the whole of Skyrend, this was no less than a blow to the vitality of the whole of Skyrend. Skyrend was also a sect that had risen very quickly in recent years. Otherwise, it would not have been suppressed by the Crystal Palace with all its might. Over the years, with the power of Xiao Baiyu, apart from Xiao Baiyu, pure young Laozu, Skyrend originally had 3 great adepts, 6 mid-Dharma adepts, and 11 or 12 Dharma adepts. This time, it had suddenly lost a third of them. Although on the surface, it seemed that the Crystal Palace had suffered a greater loss, but the Crystal Palace had dominated overseas for tens of thousands of years. As the only major sect overseas, there had long been rumors in the world of practitioners that the Crystal Palace was the real number 1 holy land in the world of practitioners. 10 Dharma adepts, including 1 great adept, had fallen. Although the loss was huge, it was far less serious than the loss of Skyrend. However, the most surprising thing was the attitude of the Green Sea Snake. In this internal strife among the human practitioners, the Green Sea Snake had actually chosen to stand on the side of Xiao Baiyu. Thinking back to the previous battle at the Qingming River, the peacock race in the Endless Mountains seemed to have also stood on the side of Xiao Baiyu. Although young Shouchang, the royal brother, was famous for being unreliable in the world of practitioners, Yang Wangdi's identity made it so that no one dared to underestimate the attitude of the peacock royalty. The world of practitioners was a treacherous place. Apart from these famous sects, tribes, and clans, no one could see the current situation in the world of practitioners. However, at this time, another piece of news came from the world of practitioners. The great spiritual apes of the North Ice Plains, who had rarely appeared in the world of practitioners, suddenly appeared everywhere in the world of practitioners. Immediately after the peacock royalty, young Wangdi was once incited by someone to make a slip of the tongue when he was messing around in the Central Plains. He said that during the battle at the Qingming River, the last pure yang adept who entered the battlefield was actually the former general of the great spiritual apes, Yuan Pokong. That guy is a madman, even crazier than Xiao Baiyu. He doesn't like to fight one-on-one, but he loves to fight in groups. Whenever he sees a group fight, he'll rush up and start a fight. After he messed things up like that, everyone else became his enemy. If it was a one-on-one fight, I naturally wouldn't be afraid, but who would be able to take a beating from him? You all saw it for yourselves, it wasn't just me, everyone else scattered. I heard that after Senior Laozu defeated the Unfettered One and everyone dispersed, that Yuan Pokong chased after Xiao Baiyu and Laozu. Senior, do you know why? Could it be that this Senior Yuan Pokong is also here to help Xiao Laozu? As he poured wine for young Wangdi, he asked about the minor repairs of an ordinary tavern in the Central Plains. Young Wangdi looked at minor repairs from the corner of his eyes and said, "Brat, you've got some guts. You dare to trick me." That gaze scared the minor repairs out of his wits, but young Wangdi chuckled and said, "Then I'll tell you." Minor repairs cursed in his heart, "You're a pure young great cultivator. Do you feel any sense of accomplishment scaring a waiter like me? Actually, Yuan Pokong suffered a loss at Madman Xiao's hands all those years ago. Oh, then this Yuan Pokong Laozu went to take revenge? Then, Laozu, did you also lose to Xiao Laozu back then? How could I possibly lose?" Young Wangdi immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and said, "He was the one who lost to me, okay. Is that okay?" The waiter hurriedly nodded and said, "Good, good, how could Xiao Laozu be your opponent? A 5-element spiritual light fan is enough to send him back to the East Sea." Young Wangdi immediately beamed with joy, and his expression was full of praise. He then took out a stone and gave it to Minor Repairs. Minor Repairs hurriedly thanked him, and when he raised his head, young Wangdi had already disappeared. Only then did he realize that the stone in his hand was actually a top-grade spirit stone. The next day, the tavern was burned into ruins. The culprit was unknown, but young Wangdi's words in the tavern had spread. Chapter 1174. Although young Shouchang had finally confirmed that the wise Great Ape Clan had entered the cultivation world of the Central Plains, the cultivation world had never forgotten about the fuse of all these events, the heaven-opening relic in Hanya Laozu's possession. Regardless of whether it was the 6 sacred lands or the demon clan, none of them said a word about this matter. However, as time passed, news gradually spread. Hanya Laozu had never appeared in Wuxing School. Hundreds of miles north of the Qingming River, a great battle had broken out in a forest. After the battle, some cultivators had seen cultivators from the 5 holy lands in the vicinity, including the 11 cultivators who had rushed out of the Northern Alliance's treasure ship. As a result, the cultivation circle was once again filled with various rumors and speculations. Some said that Han Yi was dead and the heaven-opening relic had fallen into the hands of others. Some said that the 5 holy lands killed him afterwards. Some said that the heaven-opening relic did not exist and was just used to lure Xiao Baiyu, and so on. However, at this moment, the murderer of Hanya Laozu and the ultimate owner of the Northern Alliance's heaven-opening relic were resting on the back of a black tortoise on the Qingming River. On the other hand, although Lu Ping looked relaxed, his entire mind was focused on the handkerchief woven from the frost silk in his heart core. The eyes of the Dharma form of the dragon flickered with a green and red light. Characters began to appear on the snow-white silk handkerchief. The battle of the ice plains concerns the Khanate. For you, I will kill my way through this world. Only death awaits me. Determination, sorrow, heroism, sternness, killing intent, sword intent, affection. All the artistic conception came from these words. For a moment, Lu Ping was deeply immersed in the artistic conception expressed by these words. The Dharma form of the dragon shook its head and wagged its tail. The pearl of pure yang in its abdomen shone brightly. Lu Ping's divine sense finally sensed that something was wrong. The jade phosphorus soul fire blazed and began to struggle to break free from the binding of this artistic conception. Fortunately, Lu Ping's divine sense was outstanding, and he had the help of the jade phosphorus soul flame. So, he quickly broke free from the complex concepts expressed in these 20 words. However, Lu Ping still couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. It was just a few words, but they gave Lu Ping such a horrifying feeling. The heaven-splitting ancestors were truly people who could only be looked up to. Lu Ping, who had just woken up, didn't have the time to ponder over the artistic conception that Zhao Daoren had expressed in the 20 words at that time. Instead, he began to let his imagination run wild over the meaning of the 20 words. Who was Zhao Daoren going to fight in the icy plains? At the beginning of the world, besides the 7th Patriarch himself, who else could threaten the existence like Zhao Daoren? Did the threat come from outside this world? However, considering the relationship between Zhao Daoren and Peng Daoren, and the fact that Zhao Daoren failed to ask Taoist who to refine the sword of the immortal spirit, Lu Ping was more willing to believe that the 7th Patriarch had a dispute with him. So what was the purpose of the dispute? Perhaps the reason lay in the 4 words, "It's about the congenital." But what did the congenital mean? Lu Ping was still confused. The understanding of the congenital in the cultivation world was more like inborn and gifted. But in any case, these had nothing to do with the 7 heaven-splitting ancestors, Laozu. "I'll kill my way through this world for you. Only death awaits me." It was easy to understand. It seemed that Zhao Daoren was not optimistic about the upcoming battle in the icy plains and had risked his life. But it seemed that his life was not for him, but for others. Who was Zhao Daoren fighting for? Looking at the silk handkerchief and the Tsailwan ornament in the lower right corner of the silk handkerchief, the answer to the question seemed to be obvious. In the Battle of the Icy Plains, Zhao Daoren wanted to fight for the Luan Daoist. The purpose of the congenital was also to fight for the Luan Daoist, even at the cost of his own life. As for why Zhao Daoren wanted to fight for the Luan Daoist, it was not difficult to understand. The 7th Patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors had 4 men and 3 women. Among them, Taoist, who was a tall and sturdy woman, a real tigress and extremely fierce, while Luan Daoist and Taoist Chan were both charming great beauties. With Zhao Daoren's romantic personality, it was not strange if he really fell for the Luan Daoist's skirt. Even if he had to pay with his own life for this, it might not be worth it in many people's eyes, or even a child's play. But no one knew whether Zhao Daoren believed in the saying, "Even if I die under a peony flower, I'll still be a romantic even as a ghost," and intended to verify it himself. All the mysteries seemed to revolve around the congenital, but Lu Ping had no clue what the congenital in Zhao Daoren's words meant. Lu Ping slowly sat up on the back of the black tortoise, stretched out his arms, and then looked to the north across the sky. The northern ice plains. It was said that the Laozu who achieved the true spirit in the cultivation world would eventually disappear there, and it was also the place where the 7th Patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors disappeared. It was said that the 7th Patriarch of the heaven-splitting ancestors had opened a door to the outside world, and then disappeared from the northern ice plains. Everyone thought that the 7th Patriarch had gone to a place outside of this world, and the true spirit cultivators of the cultivation world had all left the northern ice plains through the exit that the 7th Patriarch had left behind. This legend was not groundless. It was spread to the world before the 7th Patriarch went to the northern ice plains, and outside the passage, the 7th Patriarch had set up a large formation. Those who were not Zhonling cultivators were not qualified to pass through the formation. In addition to testing the qualifications of cultivators to leave this world, this great formation was also used to protect this passageway. Not only was it used to protect it from being destroyed by cultivators from this world, it was also used to protect this passageway from being invaded by things from outside this world. However, from the looks of it now, it seemed that the passageway leading to the outside world under the cover of the layers of formations in the northern ice plains hid many secrets that outsiders did not know about. Unfortunately, all those who might know about these secrets never returned after entering the formation. The formation in the northern ice plains was the final goal of all the cultivators in this world. From the moment it appeared, it was covered in a layer of holiness. However, when Lu Ping looked to the north, he could not help but feel a shadow in his heart. Just what was behind the formation? Lu Ping shook his head and no longer thought about these things. With his current cultivation, he was far from having the qualifications to think about going there. However, the handwriting written by Jiao Daoren on the silk handkerchief had been spread to the world. Regardless of whether or not someone had truly comprehended any magical abilities from the handkerchief, at the very least, the contents of the handkerchief were known by more than one person. At the very least, Hanya Laozu knew about it. Otherwise, how could it have been spread to the world by the 5 Holy Lands? However, the 6 Holy Lands had spread Jiao Daoren's handwriting to the world, but they did not spread the contents of the handkerchief. It seemed that the 6 Holy Lands only wanted to use the handkerchief to kill Xiao Baiyu. They did not want to give up on the handkerchief written by Jiao Daoren. Could it be that the 6 Holy Lands themselves wanted to cover up this news? Although Lu Ping was a little uncertain, it was not impossible. At the very least, the 6 Holy Lands had been established at the beginning of the world. The founder of the 6 Holy Lands, Laozu, had more or less been directly or indirectly related to the 7th Patriarch. If one were to say who knew the most secrets of this world, it would probably be the 6 Holy Lands. In the core space, the dragon form once again opened its eyes wide to carefully study the handkerchief. This time, it was not looking at the contents of the handkerchief, but observing the handwriting. In the past, Xiao Baiyu had comprehended a peerless sword technique from the handkerchief written by Jiao Daoren. How could Lu Ping let go of such an opportunity? He had to give it a try after all. However, after observing for a while, even Lu Ping himself did not know how much time had passed, but he gained nothing. He could not help but feel discouraged. He thought to himself, could it be that only a pure sword practitioner like Xiao Baiyu, who has the extraordinary comprehension in the world, can comprehend something from it? Or maybe there is no peerless sword technique in these handkerchief at all? Lu Ping had no choice but to wake up from his meditative state again. He looked around and found that Shen Tortoise was following the flow of the river. He didn't know where it was now, but he noticed that the Qingming River seemed to flow a lot more smoothly. There were no longer hills and forests on both sides, but an endless plain. Lu Ping guessed that he was now in the middle of the Qingming River. On the plain, the green sea was rolling, but it was not seawater, but farmland. There were many figures in the farmland, but many mortals were working in it. Such a scene could also be seen overseas, but it was not as vast as the mainland. Besides, the number of cultivators and mortals in the overseas cultivation world was far less than that of the mainland. However, the ratio of cultivators and mortals in the overseas cultivation world was slightly higher than that of the mainland. There were also spiritual fields in the farmland from time to time because of the existence of spiritual gathering places. Therefore, low-level cultivators could often be seen flying in the sky, and the mortals on the ground had long been accustomed to it. Lu Ping's eyes were so sharp that he soon found that most of these low-level cultivators were minor repairs in the blood-refining realm. However, the flying celestial tools under their feet were mostly celestial tools. Thinking of the joy of obtaining a celestial tool when he was in the late blood-refining realm, the popularity of celestial tools among the blood-refining realm cultivators in the mainland was obviously much higher than that of the North Sea. Thinking of refining celestial tools, Lu Ping suddenly made a no sound. Strictly speaking, the silk handkerchief was only made of extremely high quality, but it itself was not a celestial tool or a magic treasure. Those who obtained it would naturally not try to refine it with their true essence. At this time, an idea popped up in Lu Ping's mind for no reason. Should I try refining it with my true essence? The true essence was like a surging sea, instantly immersing the entire handkerchief in it. The colorful phoenix in the lower right corner of the silk handkerchief shone brightly, and the lifelike colorful phoenix seemed to be alive. At the same time, 3 inexplicable auras were suddenly attracted by Lu Ping's vigorous true essence, but Lu Ping's eyes became brighter and brighter. There was really something strange inside. Chapter 1175. Longhuai ancestor once said that there was a treasure hidden in the silk handkerchief. After Hanya Laozu obtained it, he wanted to bring it back to Wuxing School to make up for the shortcomings of the water-broken school. However, although the two of them could sense that there was a treasure hidden in the silk handkerchief, they didn't know what the treasure was. Of course, it was also possible that Longhui ancestor knew what was inside, but he didn't tell Lu Ping. However, when Lu Ping's real essence flowed into the silk handkerchief, he encountered a strange thing. With Lu Ping's current arcane essence, his arcane essence was already rich and pure. The North Sea Wave listening scripture, a mysterious cultivation method, had extremely strict requirements on the purity of his arcane essence. As a result, when he was in the core forging realm, he chose to fuse with 1 heaven low-grade arcane essence, 2 heaven mid-grade arcane essences, and 3 heaven high-grade arcane essences. This method of fusion was one of a kind in the cultivation world. Of course, Lu Ping's hard work and luck played a huge part in this, but the root cause was the North Sea Wave listening scripture's outstanding cultivation method. After Lu Ping fused with such wonderful heaven-level spirit objects, the water property in his real essence was really rare in the world. It could be said that if Lu Ping melted a drop of real essence into a pool of spiritual water, then depending on the amount of spiritual water and the degree of the real essence, the spiritual property in the spiritual water would be comparable to any heaven-level spirit object, ranging from heaven-level low-grade to heaven-level high-grade. Of course, real essence water could not be used as heaven-level spirit water unless it was absolutely necessary. This was because real essence water was usually the fusion of several heaven-level spirit objects, and there was no longer a pure spiritual property in it. However, just as Lu Ping inserted his real essence into the silk handkerchief, he suddenly found a spiritual property that was far more spiritual than Lu Ping's real essence. This kind of spiritual property was not as pure as heaven-level spirit objects. On the contrary, it was like the refined real essence of spirit objects. It was a kind of man-made object. However, Lu Ping soon found that there was more than one spiritual property hidden in the silk handkerchief. He soon found a second one, and then a third one. When Lu Ping's real essence had soaked the whole silk handkerchief, he finally confirmed that there were only 3 spiritual property in the silk handkerchief. What was this? Lu Ping summoned Linglong's wine cauldron from the side of the Dharma idol. Since the last time when he tried to stop Hanya Laozu from self-destructing, Linglong had been in a state of deep sleep. Lu Ping knew that Linglong's vitality had been injured this time. Although it was difficult to control the real essence of a great cultivator, if she could really control it, it would be an excellent opportunity to improve her own quality. However, at this time, he had to wake Linglong from her deep sleep. Linglong was extremely familiar and sensitive to all kinds of spiritual liquids in the world. Perhaps she could guess a thing or two about this kind of spiritual liquid that Lu Ping had never seen before. Linglong reluctantly put the silk handkerchief in the wine cauldron. The Dharma idol spat out a mouthful of original dragon breath, and the wine cauldron immediately began to spin. In just a moment, Linglong's scream came from the wine cauldron. The Dharma idol immediately stopped, and the wine cauldron also stopped spinning. Linglong came out of the wine cauldron and said, "Brother, the things on this silk handkerchief are very precious, I want them." The Dharma idol sat on the lotus and said, "Do you have a way to separate the 3 spiritual property from the silk handkerchief?" Linglong's face suddenly became bitter, and she shook her head. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but he still asked, "Do you know what these 3 spiritual property are?" Linglong hesitated and said, "They seem to be tears." Tears? Lu Ping couldn't help but be surprised, but then Lu Ping also felt that it might really be tears. Wasn't a handkerchief originally used to wipe sweat, tears, and the like? It was reasonable to say that there were tears in the silk handkerchief. However, these tears were too mysterious. The 3 drops of tears soaked in the silk handkerchief for a long time without drying up. Moreover, thinking about the spirituality contained in the silk handkerchief that even Lu Ping's own Jin Yuan couldn't compare to, it seemed that the original owner of these tears was on the verge of being revealed. The tears of the Luan Daoist. As for the reason, it seemed to be easy to explain. Jiao Daoren had left a message on this silk handkerchief and even said that he would die for her, so it was only natural that the Luan Daoist would be moved to tears. As for why he was so sure that the tears in the silk handkerchief definitely belonged to the Luan Daoist, Lu Ping looked at the Cai Luan at the bottom right corner of the silk handkerchief and didn't seem to have any other guesses. Moreover, other than the Luan Daoist's identity as the 7th patriarch of opening up the sky, What other tears could exist in this silk handkerchief for such a long time without drying up? Lu Ping immediately thought of something, and his divine will descended into the house of gold, immediately forming a shadow of Lu Ping. This was also a remarkable ability that Lu Ping had mastered after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. In other words, it was the image of divine will technique, which was actually the condensation of one's own divine will into a projection, which could be used to converse with someone who wasn't in front of him. This was originally a technique that could only be mastered after advancing to the late Dharma stage. Now that Lu Ping's level of practice had stabilized, he could also use the image of divine will technique. The projection held the silk handkerchief and called Lu Qina over, instructing her, "Qina, can you see if you can feel what's in the silk handkerchief?" Lu Qina's divine will entered the handkerchief, and she could not help but frown. Then, she tried to use her inner yuan to enter the handkerchief, but the silk handkerchief had long been filled with Lu Ping's own inner yuan. There was no way that Lu Qina could fight against Lu Ping's inner yuan. Without waiting for Lu Ping to say anything, Lu Qina let out a cry of surprise and almost fell. Lu Ping's image of divine will was directed towards Lu Qina, and a thick wave of inner yuan was injected into Lu Qina's body through the air. Only then did he say, "Qina, try again this time." Although she had the support of Lu Ping's inner yuan, Lu Qina still carefully reached out to touch the silk handkerchief. After making sure that there was no backlash from Lu Ping's inner yuan, she then followed the guidance of Lu Ping's inner yuan and began to search for the 3 teardrops hidden in the silk handkerchief. Lu Qina's expression suddenly became pious, and her eyelids twitched. Clearly, she was extremely excited at this time. Lu Ping softly asked, "Qina, how is it?" As soon as he said this, Lu Qina actually knelt down towards the silk handkerchief, and then she piously returned the silk handkerchief to Lu Ping, saying, "Big brother, this silk handkerchief contains the sacred relic of Qina's ancestor. It seems to be tears." Lu Ping's heart became even more certain, and he asked, "Does Qina know if this is a sacred relic left behind by the ancestor of the Luan clan?" Lu Qina shook her head and said, "Qina can only feel that these 3 teardrops contain a vast amount of qi from the ancestor of the Luan clan, and it will be of great help to Qina's growth. As for which ancestor of the Luan clan, Qina doesn't know. However, this ancestor must be very powerful, and Qina can't imagine that these 3 teardrops can contain such great power." Lu Ping noticed the excitement on Lu Qina's face, so he asked softly, "Qina, are you confident you can extract the senior's relic from the silk handkerchief? I'm sure they will be very useful to you, right?" Lu Qina thought for a moment, and then shook her head, saying, "Qina's cultivation is not high enough. Qina's instincts can sense these things, and they will be of great benefit to Qina in the future. However, Qina is far from being able to absorb and refine them now." Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Originally, he thought that even if Lu Qina couldn't extract the teardrops from the silk handkerchief, if she could absorb a portion of them, she would be able to break through to the 9th layer of core forging and condense a high-grade golden core. However, this was clearly not something that the current Lu Qina could enjoy. For a moment, Lu Ping seemed to be at a loss of what to do. If he couldn't extract the 3 teardrops, then he would be unable to use the ready-made treasures. With no other choice, Lu Ping could only put all his energy back into the 20 handkerchief handwriting of Jiao Daoren. He wanted to see if he could comprehend a trace of the essence of swordsmanship hidden in Jiao Daoren's handwriting. However, at this moment, Lu Ping suddenly discovered that the Dragon Dharma idol had unknowingly spat out the pure yang pearl, and it was currently floating above the silk handkerchief. Lu Ping was stunned. His divine sense penetrated the pure yang pearl, and to his surprise, he discovered that traces of pure yang qi were being emitted from the silk handkerchief and were gathering towards the pure yang pearl in midair. Even the teardrops contained pure yang qi. No matter how Lu Ping thought about it, he was afraid that only a mighty figure like Luan Daoist could achieve this state of plucking a hair to benefit the world. Lu Ping was naturally overjoyed. Although he had spent most of his energy on the silk handkerchief while drifting on the Qingming River, Lu Ping's cultivation had still ushered in a period of rapid growth. The reason was that after Lu Ping had survived the first lightning tribulation, the pure yang soul of flying Laozu had condensed into a ball of essence, which was being continuously absorbed by the Dragon Dharma idol. As the Dragon Dharma idol absorbed, refined, and fused with the pure yang qi, the pure yang pearl was gradually refined by the Dragon Dharma idol. Unknowingly, it made Lu Ping think of a divine object like the dragon pearl. However, in this world, other than the Longhui ancestor, the word dragon had never appeared, let alone the dragon pearl. Just as the pure yang qi that was hidden in the teardrops in the silk handkerchief was absorbed by the pure yang pearl, Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly discovered that the 3 teardrops had come alive. Of course, it was not that the 3 teardrops had come alive, but that the 3 teardrops were finally no longer as indifferent to any of Lu Ping's methods as before. Under Linglong's repeated confirmation and Lu Ping's repeated promises, Linglong finally agreed to help Lu Ping extract the 3 teardrops from the silk handkerchief. The condition was naturally that Linglong would leave enough benefits in the teardrops. Therefore, Linglong had already decided that after absorbing the essence of the phoenix teardrops, it would be time for Lu Ping to summon the second lightning tribulation. Chapter 1176. The 3 teardrops were carefully placed into a jade essence bottle by Lu Ping. After thinking for a bit, Lu Ping poured out another teardrop into his palm and began to sense its aura. After all, this was something from Sky Splitter Laozu. Even though it was only a teardrop, perhaps it contained something useful to Lu Ping. As for the other teardrop, Lu Ping didn't give it to Linglong or Lu Qin'er. Lu Qin'er wanted this teardrop to sense the aura of Luan Daoist. Lu Qin'er was a wind and fire dual cultivator, but this teardrop was a water source in the end, so it wouldn't be of too much help to her own cultivation. What was truly useful to the main body was Linglong, so despite Linglong's reluctance, Lu Ping still gave the teardrop to Lu Qin'er first to sense it. Lu Ping himself was also carefully inspecting one of the Luan teardrops. Just before, after Lu Ping used the pure yang bead to strip away the trace of pure yang energy from the 3 Luan teardrops, there was a moment when the talisman Lu Ping condensed in the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud throbbed. Lu Ping's senses were sharp. In just an instant, he discovered that the talisman that was affected by the Luan's aura was actually the talisman that Lu Ping had been trying to cultivate for a long time but had failed twice. The bubbling sky-filling sword art was an extremely strange technique. Although it was a water attribute technique, it carried a trace of something related to the fire attribute. Originally, this sword technique of Lu Ping might be a dual cultivator of water and fire, but at his current level of cultivation, his vision and knowledge were far from what it used to be. Soon, he found that this sword technique was not like that. Instead, it was greatly influenced by Xie Tianyang. Back when Xie Tianyang exchanged the cultivation method of the boiling sky sword technique from Lu Ping, he said that there was a senior of Purple Sun Palace, Laozu, who believed that this sword technique had many wondrous uses and revelations for fire and water. It was also very useful for cultivators who cultivated these 2 attributes, so he exchanged this sword technique with Lu Ping. But in reality, Lu Ping was misled by Xie Tianyang. It was not that this sword technique was completely unrelated to the fire attribute, but this sword technique was a genuine water attribute sword technique. However, in the process of cultivating this sword technique, if one wanted to achieve success, they would need an external help. Or perhaps, this should be a dual cultivator sword technique. This external assistance was a fire-attributed sword technique or fire-attributed divine ability that was compatible with the bubbling heaven sword art. The so-called fire and water complementing each other didn't mean that the cultivator who cultivated this sword art had to cultivate both fire and water at the same time. Instead, the cultivator who cultivated another fire-attributed sword technique or fire-attributed cultivation method needed to lend a helping hand. Only then would the cultivator be able to reach the highest realm of this sword art. The ancestors of the overwhelming sky sect described this sword technique as a pot of hot soup that needed fire to be added to boil. In fact, this was not wrong. However, the boiling hot soup was still separated from the fire by a layer of the pot. In the end, it couldn't be considered true fire and water complementing each other, but it was borrowing the power of the fire. But now, for some inexplicable reason, the Luan's tear bead had become a catalyst for Lu Ping's sky-boiling sword art. The tear was still based on water. In the past, the The Luan Daoist didn't only use fire attribute abilities to dominate the world. However, the Luan Daoist himself liked to live in places with volcanoes and magma. These places were all extremely rich in fire attribute origin energy. Because of this, the Fire Phoenix clan was the most powerful among the direct descendants of the Luan Daoist. Moreover, the Fire Phoenix clan believed that the Luan Daoist was originally from the Fire Phoenix clan. However, when one reached the level of the Luan Daoist, there were no clear differences between water, fire, wood, or wind spells. This was why the descendants didn't know the origin of the Luan Daoist. If this was really the case, then the Luan Daoist's tear contained a strong fire attribute origin energy. However, the tear itself still appeared as a tear. This made sense. After all, the abilities of the Sky Splitter Laozu were not something that these cultivators could figure out. Lu Ping knew that this was his chance. Following the inexplicable aura in the teardrop, the spinning chainkill talisman suddenly shone brightly and absorbed the teardrop that was once soaked in the fire element into the talisman. Then, the dragon avatar suddenly raised its head and the reverse scale on its neck shone with a purplish golden light. The talisman was attracted to the reverse scale and began to construct a new skill seed. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping had acquired another great innate skill. Among the 4 fundamental abilities of the boiling sky sword technique, the serial killing technique, the seeping sword technique, and the drowning sword technique had all been successfully condensed into great abilities. Only the boiling water sword technique, which Lu Ping had always been clueless about, was left. Not even the talisman had been formed in the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud. Naturally, Lu Ping would not let go of this opportunity. In the middle of the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud, a purple-golden mist suddenly began to condense, rolling like boiling water. Even the whole core space was filled with the sound of water boiling. The boiling water sword technique, which he had been studying for many years, was suddenly formed at this moment. After an unknown amount of time, in the middle of the Dharma manifestation's auspicious cloud, a talisman gradually condensed. No matter where this talisman swam in the auspicious cloud around it suddenly began to churn violently as if it was boiling. The magical talisman of the boiling water sword technique was finally condensed. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't let go of such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He focused all his attention on his heart core, and the serial whirlwind kill that he condensed into the seed of the boiling water sword skill, seeping water sword skill, and drowning water sword skill, immediately became the bridge between the boiling water sword skill, seeping water sword skill, and drowning sword skill. The Dharma manifestation of the dragon was churning up and down in the core space, and the real essence in Lu Ping's blood was like a flowing river, gathering all the real essence into the core space. The sound of the Qingming River flowing towards the south had been replaced by the sound of gululu, gululu. On the surface of the river, with a radius of more than 1,000 feet around Black Tortoise, the Qingming River seemed to be boiling, and a large number of bubbles appeared. Countless Kuei water essence was absorbed from the river and gathered in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's clothes were suddenly all wet. At the same time, Lu Ping's Black Tortoise also benefited. Taking advantage of the time when Lu Ping was absorbing the essence of the Qingming River, Black Tortoise greedily absorbed the essence of the water, and its cultivation began to grow rapidly. At this time, Lu Ping simply released Samling, letting the 3 of them take the opportunity to cultivate, and at the same time, protect him when he was in closed-door cultivation. As the sun rose and set, the upstream and downstream of the Qingming River where Lu Ping was located, within a radius of 5 miles, was filled with the mist of the river, and it lasted for 2 years. The strange scene of the dense fog sealing the river naturally quickly attracted the attention of the nearby cultivators. Some cultivators were attracted over and took the risk to enter the fog to investigate the situation, but they suddenly discovered that this place was actually filled with dense water element spirit energy. These cultivators were naturally overjoyed. To be able to gather such rich spiritual qi, there must be some great treasure in the Qingming River, so they naturally wanted to explore further into the depths of the mist. Unexpectedly, before they could go deeper, they were inexplicably knocked out by an attack and thrown out of the Qingming River. However, this method not only did not stop the greed of the cultivators, but also made the news spread more and more widely, attracting the attention of more cultivators, including some high-level cultivators in the sects. However, when these late core forging adepts, who were high and mighty in the eyes of ordinary cultivators, entered the mist and were thrown out of the Qingming River like dead dogs, finally a portion of the cultivators realized that something was wrong, and slowly began to retreat. However, such a strange scene happening on the Qingming River, in the end, there was still a portion of cultivators who were unconvinced and called for the intervention of Fa Xiong Laozu. However, when other Dharma adepts entered the fog, they would usually hear an earth-shattering battle from within the fog, after which everything became silent. Just as the cultivators outside the fog were wondering what was going on, the Dharma adept walked out of the fog with a strange look on his face. He then warned the cultivators waiting outside the fog that the person in the middle of the Qingming River was a powerful cultivator who was cultivating in seclusion. They were not to enter and disturb the senior cultivator's cultivation. When the news spread, many of the cultivators who thought that it was some kind of treasure were naturally disappointed, and they all turned back. Some greedy cultivators saw that even Fa Xiong Laozu could not do anything about it, and could only suppress the greed in their hearts. However, there were still some cultivators who stayed outside the mist, trying to use the dense water-based spiritual qi in the mist to start cultivating, and the powerful cultivator hidden in the mist obviously did not make a move to chase these cultivators away. And just as these Dharma adepts left, the cultivation world finally spread another piece of shocking news. There was a powerful cultivator of the green sea snakes swimming in the Qingming River to cultivate in seclusion, causing the mist to lock the river. The news was accurate. One after another, a few Dharma adepts entered the mist to investigate, but they were blocked by the combined forces of 3 green sea snakes. These 3 green sea snakes were a wind snake, a water snake, and an ice snake, all of which had the authentic bloodline of the green sea snakes. The 3 snakes were all at the peak of the core forging stage, but their abilities were not inferior to the direct disciples of the 5 Holy Lands who had condensed a 9th-grade golden core. The 3 snakes joined forces to fight against every Dharma adept that entered the mist, and then explained the reason to them. It turned out that the elders of these 3 green sea snakes suddenly had an epiphany when they were traveling in the Qingming River, and so they began to cultivate in seclusion in the Qingming River. The 3 young cultivators naturally had to protect their elders. As for the mist that filled the sky, it was formed by the powerful cultivator of the green sea snakes, who had extracted the essence of the water element from the Qingming River during his cultivation. Many early Dharma adepts had been defeated by the 3 of them, and even 2 mid-Dharma adepts from mid-sized sects had entered the mist, but in the end, they did not have the upper hand. Even if there were strong mid-Dharma adepts who had the upper hand, after the 3 snakes revealed their identities, they all showed signs of fear. No one was willing to offend the green sea snakes for no reason. Chapter 1177. On this day, a middle-aged cultivator was riding a giant anaconda downstream of the Qingming River. He traveled upstream and arrived in front of the mist that covered most of the Qingming River. At this moment, a deafening roar suddenly came from the depths of the fog. It was like a huge pot of boiling water was surging and churning. The mist covering the surface of the river churned violently. Many of the low-level cultivators who had been cultivating within the mist for the past 2 years cried out in shock as they quickly flew out from the mist. Then, they saw that the mist covering the surface of the river for the past 2 days was rapidly shrinking. The middle-aged cultivator was slightly surprised, but then he smiled and said, "What a coincidence." As the mist shrank, the middle-aged cultivator leisurely strolled in the direction of the mist. When the mist had shrunk to a size of 300 zhong, the middle-aged cultivator finally came to a halt. At that moment, the mist was roiling even more violently. The gululu sound was so loud that even the middle-aged cultivator could feel a wave of heat assaulting his face. The middle-aged cultivator was taken aback for a moment. Instantly, he realized that there was no real heat wave charging towards him. Rather, it was an illusion that his soul was experiencing. Or perhaps, it was just a feeling. The heat wave was actually charging towards his soul in the first place. The Surging Heavens sect's Surging Heavens sword art is truly unique. The middle-aged cultivator nodded in praise. At this moment, the mist finally shrunk completely, disappearing into the body of a young cultivator. Beneath his feet, a huge black tortoise floated silently above the azure nether river, and behind him stood 3 youths around the age of 15 or 16. This young cultivator was naturally Lu Ping, and the one standing behind him was naturally Samling. The middle-aged cultivator smiled at Lu Ping, then looked at the Samling behind Lu Ping with a satisfied expression. He then looked at the giant Shen tortoise beneath Lu Ping's feet and said in surprise, "The tyrannical tortoise bloodline, Your Excellency is truly becoming more and more astonishing." Lu Ping seemed to have already sensed the arrival of the middle-aged cultivator. He only smiled slightly and said, "Your Excellency, did you come from the East Sea for the Samling?" The middle-aged cultivator was surprised that Lu Ping could see through him at a glance. One must know that the middle-aged cultivator's cultivation was far above Lu Ping's. He was confident that even the Samling behind Lu Ping would not be able to discover that he was from the same clan. However, he was seen through by Lu Ping at a glance. This caused the middle-aged cultivator to put away his contempt. His expression became much more solemn. He laughed and said, "I am Chu Yuntian from the Green Sea Snake Wind Snake Clan. Greetings, Lu Daoyu." Lu Ping naturally did not dare to slight him. He also bowed and said, "Lu Tianping from the North Sea greets you, senior. May I know if you have come specially for the Samling?" Chu Yuntian smiled and said, "Lu Xiaoyu has made such a big movement in the Central Plains. Even the green sea snakes in the East Sea have heard the news. Tsunami and Hailan naturally did not dare to hide the fact that you have the green sea snakes following you. Hence, I came to the Central Plains." Lu Ping nodded. He had a sudden inspiration on the Qingming River. In order to seize this fleeting opportunity, he had to go into seclusion on the spot by the Foglock River. In order not to be disturbed during his seclusion, he had to summon Samling to protect him. At that time, he already knew that the identity of Samling could not be maintained. Hence, he was already prepared for the arrival of the green sea snakes. As for the green sea snakes, they had always been a race that valued their own clansmen. The sudden news from the Central Plains that a great medic of the green sea snakes was on the Qingming River in seclusion on the spot by the Foglock River. This naturally caused the green sea snakes to be extremely surprised and attach great importance to it. Since when did a cultivator from their clan go to the Middle Earth? Who would be so reckless as to enter seclusion on the Azure Nether River with 3 juniors? Furthermore, from the information they received, these 3 juniors were actually a wind serpent, a water serpent, and an ice serpent. Impressively, they were the 3 most powerful tribes of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake Clan. This time, Chu Yuntian came to the Central Plains to investigate this matter. If there was really a cultivator from the green sea snakes who was cultivating outside, Chu Yuntian naturally had to lend a helping hand. He would protect the cultivator and protect the 3 younger disciples at the same time. If someone was impersonating the cultivator, or someone had kidnapped the younger disciples of the green sea snakes, then Chu Yuntian's mission would naturally become a thunderbolt. Unexpectedly, on the eve of Chu Yuntian's departure, the outstanding disciples of the 3rd generation, Chu Haitian's cousin, and Chu Hailan, the surprising disciple from the Fire Snake Clan, came together to report Lu Ping's matter to the elders of the green sea snakes. At the same time, they also insisted that Lu Ping did not seal Samling's divine sense and identity as Samling's follower. They also insisted on the deep relationship between Samling and Lu Ping. With the explanation of Chu Haitian and the other 2, the identity of Samling's direct descendant was no longer in doubt. At the same time, the green sea snakes gradually divided into 2 groups. One group naturally wanted to bring Samling back to the clan. How could the bloodline of the green sea snakes wander outside? As for Lu Tianping, although they would not kill him, they would still punish him slightly. The other group of cultivators was also a little hesitant because Chu Haitian and the others insisted on the identity of Samling's follower. This was because the green sea snakes allowed their clansmen to become the followers of powerful cultivators. The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake Clan had never been a clan that was complacent. They knew the principle of learning from others. Although they had the best bloodline inheritance in the world, they also hoped that their clansmen could learn more from outsiders to promote their own clan's progress. Otherwise, The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan would not have chased the arrogant primordial giant crocodile from the East Sea to the desolate North Sea cultivation world. He was just a practitioner from a medium-sized sect in the North Sea cultivation world. No matter how one looked at it, Lu Tianping could not be associated with the great divines. Even though Chu Haixiao and the others had repeatedly praised Lu Tianping for his prowess, he was at most a minor mid-dharma adept like Chu Haixiao. At best, he could only be considered a great divines in the future, but he was far from qualified now. Just as the two groups were in a stalemate, 3 great cultivator elders of the green sea snakes stood up and said that they might as well wait and see. He had to wait and see what level Lu Tianping could reach in the future. After all, Chu Haixiao had already passed on part of the secret techniques of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake to the 3 spirits. This way, before the 3 spirits reached the mid-dharma stage, their growth would not be delayed. Taking a look, they might as well send out an elder to evaluate him, to see if his strength and character could reach a high enough level in the future. After all, Samling and Lu Tianping were like father and son. If they really brought Samling back by force, it might backfire. These 3 great cultivator elders were none other than the first-generation elder Chu Fuyu, Chu Tianya, and the second-generation elder Chu Tianyu, who had received help from Lu Ping during the Battle of the Illusionary 5 Islands. These 3 were the ones who had the most authority in the green sea snakes. Their suggestion was finally agreed by everyone, and they unanimously sent Chu Yuntian all the way to the Qingming River. Chu Yuntian saw that Samling was looking at him and smiled. After all, you all have the bloodline of the green sea snakes. Your race will eventually return. How about it? Are you willing to return to the East Sea with the old man? Samling did not hesitate at all and shook his head in rejection. Chu Yuntian did not say anything else. Instead, he smiled at Lu Ping. However, when Lu Ping saw Chu Yuntian's smile, his expression immediately changed. He flung his body backward and opened the space door of the Golden House, keeping Samling inside. Then, instead of retreating, he moved forward and stretched out his hand to push backward. Whoosh! No one knew when Lu Ping had grown a tail behind him. The curled tail was obviously aimed at the back of Samling. However, Lu Ping had noticed it in advance and kept Samling first. Since he could not persuade Lu Ping, he was going to rob him by force. Lu Ping moved forward and blocked Chu Yuntian's sneak attack. However, it did not seem to be beyond Chu Yuntian's expectations. Instead, he fell into a trap that Chu Yuntian had already set up. In reality, when a great adept suddenly used a sneak attack to attack Lu Ping already knew that what would follow would be a series of attacks like a storm. His opponent would not give Lu Ping any time to breathe. Chu Yuntian was treating Lu Ping as an equal opponent. He was not treating Lu Ping like a great adept would treat a junior at the mid-dharma stage. Chu Yuntian opened his mouth and spat out a black cloud. However, it turned into a billowing black wind that rushed towards Lu Ping, who had no choice but to pounce on him. The black wind was like a bone-grinding blade, while the black cloud was like a bone-corroding poison. The two combined and rolled, trapping Lu Ping, who could not dodge in time. A look of disappointment flashed across Chu Yuntian's face. Although his opponent was only a great adept at the mid-dharma stage, even if the green sea snakes did not value Lu Ping's abilities, he had not yet become a great medic. If Lu Ping's abilities were not unique among his peers, how would the green sea snakes dare to entrust their own junior to him? Chu Yuntian was very clear that although he was a great adept at the late Dharma stage, Chu Haitian was also a great Dharma adept. However, Chu Haitian was able to easily break through Chu Yuntian's technique. Although Chu Haitian had repeatedly claimed that Lu Tianping's abilities were not below his, Chu Yuntian still had some doubts. Lu Tianping had come from a poor place like China, so it was fine if he was a little more outstanding. However, how could he be compared to the first of the 3 generations of the green sea snakes? Chu Haitian seemed to be a person who valued friendship and friendship. Chu Yuntian was most likely exaggerating on Lu Tianping's behalf. However, this remarkable power did not require Lu Tianping to completely break through like Nephew Tsunami. As long as Lu Tianping could withstand the power of the remarkable power, he would pass. Chu Yuntian thought to himself. However, before this thought flashed through Chu Yuntian's mind, a flying sword suddenly appeared in the space between Black Wind and Chu Yuntian. It was a blue flying sword. Because of the black wind swirling clouds in front of him, Chu Yuntian did not need to use any defensive treasures. If he wanted to pose a threat to Chu Yuntian, he would first have to break through or withstand the remarkable power in front of him. However, suddenly, a flying sword appeared in front of the two of them, piercing towards the chest of Chu Yuntian, who only had time to cast his defensive remarkable power. The layers of vigor chi that were used to block the attack were shattered one by one. Chapter 1178. The protective magic of a great cultivator was naturally not so easily pierced. However, the water nether sword was no longer the flying sword that relied purely on stealth to assassinate its opponent. Having survived the first thunder tribulation, even in a head-on battle, it was not something that Chu Yuntian's hurried protective gangchi could block. Chu Yuntian's eyes were wide open as he stared at the nether water sword that was less than a foot away from his chest. He suddenly opened his mouth and shouted. A long spear with a forked tip shot out and struck the tip of the nether water sword before it could pierce his chest. The forked snake spear was naturally formed from the snake tongue of Chu Yuntian's main body. Although the nether water sword had struck its target, the expression on Chu Yuntian's face was contorted. It was obvious that he was enduring immense pain. However, before the nether water sword could be sent flying, an arm suddenly stretched out from the place covered by the black clouds. It firmly grasped the nether water sword, and then casually chopped down. A sword light drew down a bolt of lightning in the air, killing with lightning speed. At this moment, Chu Yuntian was still unprepared because of Lu Ping's sneak attack. Thunderclap sword technique, divine water lightning. Chu Yuntian let out a strange cry. He naturally knew that Chu Tianya had once passed the inheritance of the thunderclap sword art to Lu Ping, but he did not expect Lu Ping to have already mastered its innate great ability so quickly. Moreover, under the cover of the divine sunflower water lightning, its power had more than doubled. In the end, Chu Yuntian was not an ordinary great cultivator. Just as the lightning sword was about to strike him, he forcibly tore open a spatial door behind him. His entire body shrunk backwards, and he immediately disappeared into it. However, as the lightning descended, it became like mercury pouring down from every pore. Before Chu Yuntian's spatial door had completely closed, the lightning had already penetrated through the crack that was left behind. Seeping water sword technique. Lu Ping was already proficient in switching between great abilities. The moment he used the thunderclap sword technique, he had already hidden a variety of changes, waiting for his opponent to change before launching another thunderous attack. Dozens of feet away, a spatial door exploded, and Chu Yuntian fell out of it in a rather sorry state. If not for Chu Yuntian's deep attainments in spatial doors, he would most likely have suffered a loss at Lu Ping's hands. Chu Yuntian looked warily at the blue flying sword hovering in Lu Ping's hand, waiting for an opportunity. He thought to himself, what a wonderful swordsmanship ability, and what a profound attainment in swordsmanship. Just based on that previous strike, this boy's strength cannot possibly be suppressed by the tsunami. However, what was even more surprising was that under the attack of the black wind and black mist, Lu Ping actually broke out of it unscathed. One must know that the black mist was a vital poison that Chu Yuntian had nurtured in his body for more than 1,000 years. It was a first-class poison in the cultivation world, and the black wind was called the bone-crushing wind. It specialized in damaging the flesh and bones of cultivators, and was the most difficult to defend against. Such two abilities were easily blocked by Lu Ping. Chu Yuntian felt that he had a very good understanding of Lu Ping's strength. He thought to himself that if this person did not die prematurely, it would be quite something to look forward to. In order to understand Lu Ping's strength, Chu Yuntian had taken him by surprise at the beginning. Now that he thought that he had a good understanding of Lu Ping's strength, he wanted to stop and say a few words of encouragement to Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping had almost suffered a great loss. In particular, that black wind had almost pierced through Lu Ping's protective magic power, scraping off a layer of his skin and flesh, and had even pierced into his bones. It was obviously a kind of vicious magic power that specialized in damaging the flesh of cultivators. At this time, How could Lu Ping let go? How could he stop just because Chu Yuntian had the intention of stopping? He was just a late Dharma adept. So what if he was a green sea snake? The netherworld aqua sword flashed away. Chu Yuntian was about to speak, but a smile of praise immediately appeared on his face. However, before he could change his words and explain anything, Lu Ping's twin flying swords had already crisscrossed and slashed towards Chu Yuntian. Previously, when he had killed Nanyu Laozu in the South China Sea, it had mostly been because of the sword of the real spirit, Mo Li, which had only given Lu Ping the confidence that he had the strength to fight against a great adept. However, when he had ambushed and killed Sweat Laozu in the forest, it had given Lu Ping a sufficient understanding of his own cultivation level and strength. He was just a great Dharma adept, and Lu Ping really did not need to worry too much about him. Although this time it was Lu Ping who had taken the initiative to attack, Chu Yuntian had already regained his composure and was not as flustered as before. Moreover, he was a great adept after all, and as an elder of the green sea snakes, his strength was not weaker than Hanya Laozu's. Consecutive flying whirlwind technique, seeping water technique, drowning water technique, boiling water technique. The four major natural remarkable powers were displayed one after another in the twin flying swords. Lu Ping had obviously used Chu Yuntian as a touchstone to practice his own natural remarkable swordsmanship. This lad's natural remarkable swordsmanship was actually so brilliant. Although Chu Yuntian was secretly surprised that Lu Ping's natural remarkable swordsmanship was flowing at will in mid-air, like flowing mercury, one wave after another, causing one to lose sight of the other. However, he still looked at Lu Ping's sword scholar with a scrutinizing gaze. He did not think that Lu Ping would be able to do anything to him. The two of them fought for more than 10 rounds, and Chu Yuntian very quickly gained the upper hand. Although the snake spear was only a first calamity spiritual treasure, it was extremely strange and difficult to deal with. But at this moment, Chu Yuntian watched as Lu Ping cast the 4 sets of skills back and forth. Although Lu Ping's swordsmanship was becoming more and more fluid, Chu Yuntian wasn't so weak that he couldn't even suppress the 4 sets of skills. At this time, Chu Yuntian suddenly understood that the kid in front of him was not angry because of the previous humiliation, but most likely used him as a practice target. When Chu Yuntian first saw him, Lu Ping knew that there was a reason for Chu Yuntian's sudden attack just now. Chu Yuntian was not here to kill him. Otherwise, Chu Yuntian would not have waited for him to master the sky-boiling sword technique before making a move. However, Chu Yuntian definitely did not hold back in this kind of abrupt test. Those who were hit by this strange method would be severely injured even if they did not die. Perhaps Chu Yuntian had a way to remedy this, but Lu Ping agreed that Chu Yuntian's idea was nothing more than to avoid it. If not, then naturally, he deserved to die. Lu Ping was annoyed, but for the sake of Samling, he could not shed all pretense of cordiality with the green sea snakes. However, Lu Ping could not stop at this point. He must teach this old man a lesson. Chu Yuntian thought he had the situation under control. He chuckled and was about to explain to Lu Ping when he was suddenly interrupted by a loud commotion. His laughter was suppressed to an inaudible whisper. Chu Yuntian thought he had the situation under control. Chu Yuntian was stunned. This sound was the same as the one that suddenly sounded on the Qingming River. However, this time, the sound was very different. The sound of boiling water still rang clearly in Chu Yuntian's mind even though he had temporarily shut off his hearing. At this time, Chu Yuntian did not want to be entangled with Lu Ping anymore. Lu Ping's strength had already gained his recognition. If they continued to fight like this, even if Chu Yuntian wanted to explain, both parties would become enemies. Although the green sea snakes had never been afraid of anything, it was not a wise thing to make enemies with someone who might appear in the future. Looking at Xiao Baiyu's current status in the world of practitioners, this matter could not be clearer. And when Chu Yuntian wanted to explain something, he suddenly realized that only his mouth was moving. Even he himself could not hear the sound of his own words. This was not just the sound of his voice being suppressed. How could a great late Dharma adept not even be able to speak? Was this a divine will attack? Chu Yuntian was stunned. Only then did he feel that the sound of boiling water seemed to be getting louder and louder in his ears. However, his mind was getting hotter and hotter, as if it was a pot of water that was being heated. Then, he felt as if he was trapped in a sky full of boiling water, like a fish that was about to be cooked. The thin water-flowing sword formed a vast ocean in mid-air. Every bubble that emerged from the ocean would turn into a large bubble that was condensed by the sword chi. When it exploded, it was like a burst of thousands of swords, catching people off guard. This was because no one could predict where the bubbles would come from under the water. Lu Ping saw that the boiling sky sword technique did not disappoint him. When the huge field of sword light was formed, it was like a pot of boiling water. Chu Yuntian was caught off guard and fell into it. Although it did not cause him any harm, he was at a loss for a moment. His divine will condensed. After all, Chu Yuntian was a great adept. After the initial panic, he immediately realized that the heat in his divine will was actually just an illusion. After he condensed his huge divine will, he suddenly shouted, "Break!" The snake spear suddenly turned into 81 thin snakes in mid-air, stirring up huge waves in the sword field formed by the dual flying swords. At the same time, his divine will suddenly turned into a strong gust of wind, sweeping the illusion in his mind into pieces. The supreme boiling sky sword technique was actually broken by Chu Yuntian in an instant. However, what Chu Yuntian did not notice was that just as the illusion in his mind was broken, a jade-green flame had already taken a step ahead of the illusion in a flash, disappearing from Lu Ping's divine will. And the sword field formed by the dual flying swords was actually broken. This time, Lu Ping did not continue to attack. Ha 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 ha. There was a flash of fear in Chu Yuntian's heart, but he still put on an expression that said, "You're very good." Everything was already under the old man's control. He said, "Lu Xiaoyou's swordsmanship is really sharp. The old man's attack just now was too rash. However, I have an important task in the clan, so I have to have a better understanding of Lu Xiaoyou's strength. If you can't overcome the old man, the three little guys can only follow the old man back to Donghai. But now it seems that Lu Xiaoyou's strength is quite convincing." Lu Ping was delighted and said, "So, Senior, you agree to let Samling return to Donghai to accept the bloodline inheritance of the green sea snakes?" However, Chu Yuntian shook his head and said, "The three little guys are naturally not a problem. The problem is Lu Xiaoyu. If you want Samling to continue to follow us, you must pass the test of the clan. Now, the old man is the first test. In the future, you will have to face at least 2 more tests when you come to Donghai. This will depend on your own efforts. Of course, you'd better get to Donghai within 100 years. Otherwise, the inheritance of Samling may be affected." Chapter 1179. The battle between Lu Ping and Nanyu Laozu was a fight to the death, and the battle with Hanya Laozu was a hasty one. Only the battle with Chu Yuntian could be considered a battle that Lu Ping had long prepared for. In the battle with Nanyu Laozu, Lu Ping had relied on the sword of the real spirit, Mo Li. In the battle with Hanya Laozu, Lu Ping had completely established the confidence to fight against late Dharma adepts. Therefore, in this battle with Chu Yuntian, Lu Ping could be considered to be at ease from start to finish. Chu Yuntian smiled and said, "Please let the 3 little ones out, Lu Xiaoyu. The old man has some gifts for them." The green sea snakes had always loved each other, and this was especially true for the younger generation. Previously, Chu Haitian and Chu Hailan had both given gifts when they met Samling. This time, Chu Yuntian was no exception. Lu Ping was naturally happy to let Samling benefit, so he opened the space portal. However, when Samling appeared, he looked at Chu Yuntian with an expression of hostility. Chu Yuntian laughed bitterly, and Lu Ping explained the situation to Samling. Only then did the expression on Samling's face lighten up. Although Samling looked like he was only 15 or 16 years old, he still had some of the nature of a child. Seeing that Chu Yuntian was originally an elder of the tribe, he already felt a sense of closeness in his heart. If not for the fact that he had suddenly become an enemy of Lu Ping, Samling would not have been so hostile towards Chu Yuntian. However, after Chu Yuntian explained the situation, and seeing the gifts that Chu Yuntian had given them, Samling thanked him and hid in a corner, giggling and comparing the gifts. Seeing Samling like this, Chu Yuntian also smiled and said to Lu Ping, Lu Xiaoyu has put in a lot of effort for these 3 children. All 3 of them have condensed a 9th grade golden core. Even among the 3rd generation disciples of the tribe, their status is equivalent to the status of direct descendants like Tsunami and Haitu. Now, among the 4th generation disciples of the tribe, there is not a single one who has reached the peak of the core forging stage. Seeing that Lu Ping was smiling without saying anything, Chu Yuntian thought for a moment, then said, I will not hide this from you, little friend. If Samling returns to the tribe in the future, I am afraid that you will have to be prepared for a more severe test. Lu Ping frowned and said, What do you mean? Chu Yuntian said with a smile, The 3 children are too outstanding. Do you think the stubborn elders of our tribe will agree to let such outstanding children be their followers? Lu Ping was silent, his expression uncertain. No one knew what he was thinking. Chu Yuntian chuckled and said, That is all the old man has said. Lu Xiaoyu, you are on your own. In short, even if our tribe has the power to hinder you, little friend, the green sea snakes have their own rules. As long as you follow the rules, no one can say anything. As he spoke, he had disappeared. Lu Ping was not surprised at all. Therefore, Lu Ping could clearly sense that Chu Yuntian had just used an extremely brilliant water escaping technique. If it was any other cultivator, perhaps they would feel bewildered by Chu Yuntian's miraculous way of disappearing. If they were more suspicious, they might even think that Chu Yuntian was hiding at the side, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Chu Yuntian had been forced into a slightly embarrassing situation by Lu Ping before. Chu Yuntian had used this secret technique this time to save some face. However, if he knew that Lu Ping had seen through him with just a glance, he would probably be even more depressed for a long time. Lu Ping's divine sense swept out, and all the cultivators hiding within a radius of dozens of miles retreated in shock. The battle between Lu Ping and Chu Yuntian just now had attracted the attention of many cultivators. At this time, those who knew Lu Tianping of the North Sea naturally knew that this person was a cultivator in the cultivation world who was not weaker than the heir of a holy land. Naturally, they did not dare to provoke him again. Even if there were those who did not know Lu Tianping of the North Sea, when they saw that Lu Ping was actually able to fight against a peak cultivator, they naturally did not dare to cause trouble. Seeing Lu Ping's divine sense sweeping out, everyone naturally avoided him. Lu Ping, who had mastered the 3rd supreme divine sense, was naturally in a good mood. He did not care about those cultivators who were still far behind him, trying to find out his whereabouts. With a slight stomp of his feet, Lu Dagui's huge body shook slightly. Once again, he split the turbulent Qingming River and swam upstream. Lu Ping's original purpose for this trip was to perfect the east-flowing river sword skill. He wanted to create a peerless sword skill to be passed down to the future generations. But who would have thought that before he could master the east-flowing river sword skill, he would first create a peerless sword skill called sky-boiling sword skill. However, before he could comprehend the sword technique, Lu Ping had to continue his journey in the Qingming River. However, this time, Lu Ping did not hide the existence of the samling. In the water around the black tortoise, the samling happily played with each other. As the spirits of the water, wherever the black tortoise passed, the Qingming River would be stirred up by them. However, with Lu Ping's suppression, there was no need to worry about the danger of the flood breaking the dam. The Qingming River was the largest river in the central region. Naturally, there were demons in the water. However, after noticing the previous battle and the aura of the top-level bloodline of the green sea snakes, most of the demons in the Qingming River chose to stay dormant and let the samling stir up the wind and rain on the river. After Chu Yuntian's previous test, the green sea snakes temporarily admitted that Lu Ping had the qualification of samling as an inheritor. However, Lu Ping also knew that after Chu Yuntian came to test him and brought back the news of samling's current cultivation, especially the news that samling had condensed a level 9 gold core, Lu Ping would inevitably encounter more difficulties in the green sea snakes in the future. Whether the green sea snakes approved of their clansmen becoming followers of others or not, they would unite to resist Lu Ping and take the samling away from their clansmen under the principle of not breaking the rules of their clansmen. Even among the green sea snakes, How many disciples of the younger generation who had condensed a level 9 gold core could appear? And those who appeared were all cultivated with the power of their clansmen. How could they be willing to let go of them to become followers of others? Lu Ping and the others went along the river. After a long time, the surface of the Qingming River became smoother and wider. The river wind blew, and only the sound of the waves when the samling played could be heard. The river became more and more quiet. The samling seemed to notice something and seemed to be tired of playing. He shrunk his body and climbed onto the back of the black tortoise. Lu Ping stood at the front of the black tortoise's shell and looked at the river in front of him with bright eyes, as if he was enjoying the scenery of the river in the far distance. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly sneered and said, "Is this interesting? When are you going to hide your head and show your tail?" A cold snort suddenly exploded in Lu Ping's ears. However, Lu Ping still looked calm and relaxed. However, the corner of his eye twitched slightly. So it was another great adept of the late Dharma stage. Only someone from a poor place like the North Sea who has never seen the world would act so ostentatiously on the Qingming River. Young lad, do you really think that the Central Plains practitioners are easy to deal with? An old voice came from the river. However, Lu Ping immediately turned his gaze to the void in the northeast direction and laughed. I was wondering who it was. So it's Ma Sai the Great Ma Li. I haven't seen you for more than 100 years, but Elder Ma looks rather hale and hearty. It looks like you've already passed the second thunder trial and have another 200 years to live. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, an old man stepped out from the void in the northeast direction where Lu Ping could see. It was the fourth elder of the Tenma people, Ma Li, who had chased after Lu Ping and the others for thousands of miles in the west. At this moment, the fourth elder of the Tenma people seemed to have an unfathomable aura. It was obvious that he had already passed the second thunder trial and had become a great adept of the late Dharma stage. However, he did not look too good now. It was obvious that he had not expected Lu Ping to be able to see through his concealment with just one look. Following the appearance of Ma Sai the Great, two more mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people appeared on the surface of the river a few hundred feet behind Lu Ping. It was obvious that they wanted to block off Lu Ping's escape route. Even though he was surrounded by a great adept and two adepts of the same level, Lu Ping did not panic at all. Instead, he smiled at Ma Sai the Great and asked, I wonder if fourth elder has come all the way from the west to come here. Do you have any advice for me? Ma Sai the Great's face was as dark as still water. He laughed coldly and said, the death of the fourth young master of the sacred lake tribe is very suspicious. The old man has come under the orders of the tribe leader to ask Lu Daoyu to follow the old man back to the west to clear himself of suspicion. Lu Ping smiled and said, since fourth elder has come under the orders of the tribe leader, how can I not see the tribe leader's flag? Every major force in the world of practitioners like the Tenma people had their own set of rules to govern the world. This was also the embodiment of the status of these major forces in the world of practitioners. The token that the Tenma people used to travel around the world was the celestial horse flag, which was a fine horse flapping its wings and flying on the flag. Since Ma Sai the Great wanted to capture Lu Ping and bring him back to the west, he naturally had to show his reasoning in the world of practitioners. Otherwise, if he lost his moral foundation, he would break the rules of the cultivation world. This might be a big trouble for the Tenma people. Moreover, Lu Tianping's reputation in the North Sea could be considered as the sun in the sky among the third-generation cultivators. If the Tenma people did not want to cause any trouble, they had to either capture or kill someone like Lu Ping in one fell swoop without leaving any evidence or future troubles, or they had to have solid evidence to uphold their moral principles. Otherwise, they would not easily make a move to avoid unnecessary trouble. It was true that the weak were prey to the strong in the world of practitioners. However, if the strength of the two parties was on par, they also had to pay attention to right and wrong. The formation of this rule could be considered as a merit that the 5 Holy Lands had strongly advocated in the Middle Mainland for tens of thousands of years. Ma Sai the Great secretly clenched his teeth. Previously, when Lu Ping revealed their whereabouts with a shout, his previous plan could not be carried out. He did not expect that Lu Ping could actually discover the whereabouts of the Tenma people so easily. While he was secretly fearful, he did not expect that Lu Ping would have so many tails following behind him. If the Tenma people captured Lu Ping for no reason, with his current status in the cultivation world, it was hard to guarantee that it would cause a great disturbance. With the current power of the Tenma people, although they might not be afraid of it, it would still be a troublesome matter. Moreover, just like what Lu Ping had said, this time, Ma Sai the Great came because of a personal grudge, and not because of Ma Chen's death. Chapter 1180. During this period of time, Lu Ping had stirred up quite a storm in Central Plains. First, he had taken advantage of a giant tortoise to float on the Qingming River, which had already attracted the attention of some people in the Central Plains training world. Then, he had caused quite a stir by sealing the Qingming River in fog. Finally, his battle with Chu Yuntian had shocked many Central Plains practitioners. The fourth elder of the Tenma people, who was in Shihuang, had naturally received the news as well. Originally, according to the fourth elder's wishes, he had wanted nothing more than to summon his troops and charge into Central Plains to kill the junior who had humiliated him many years ago. Unfortunately, at this time, the leader of the Tenma people was planning something big. All the Tenma people were doing their best for this matter, and the fourth elder did not want to cause trouble at this critical juncture. However, this matter could not be carried out with great fanfare. If the fourth elder decided to carry it out in private, there would be no one to restrain him at this moment. Thus, the fourth elder summoned his two direct descendants and quietly entered the cultivation world of the Central Plains. Originally, the fourth elder was not even willing to call his two descendants. This way, it would be difficult to keep this matter a secret in the future. Moreover, the fourth elder was confident that with his current strength, it would not be difficult for him to deal with a practitioner who had just entered the mid-Dharma stage. However, as a precaution, especially after hearing that Lu Ping had withstood a few blows from the great practitioner, Chu Yuntian, and seemed to have passed some kind of test set by this great practitioner, the fourth elder was much more cautious and decided to bring two of his descendants who were at the mid-Dharma stage as his assistants. With a great Dharma adept and two mid-Dharma adepts working together, there should not be any more accidents, right? Let's work together and finish this quickly. Ma the Great made up his mind and shouted at the two Tenma people. The life weapon in his hand, which had been refined from his own horn, was already thrusting towards Lu Ping's chest. After Ma the Great had entered the late Dharma stage, this life weapon, which had been refined from Ma the Great's horn, had finally passed its first trial. This allowed Ma the Great's power to increase by 30% when he used various spells. Just as the heavenly horned horse spur was about to hit Lu Ping's chest, Elder Ma Sai had already landed on the river. He gently stepped on the surface of the river and landed on the ground. At the same time, the two mid-Dharma stage heavenly horse cultivators behind Lu Ping also used their mystic treasures and spells to support Elder Ma Sai's pincer attack. At the same time, two whirlwinds appeared under their feet and they landed on the river water. In Lu Ping's senses, the moment the three of them landed on the surface of the river, it was as if the entire Qingming River had been shaken. Then, he saw the waves surge and the entire river began to shake violently. Life Great Spell, Galloping 10,000 Horses. Although this was only a life great spell of the Tenma people, there was something special about this great spell. It could be used as a formation to unleash the full power of the Galloping 10,000 Horses. All the adepts with the blood of the Tenma people could unleash the power of the Galloping 10,000 Horses together with the formation. Furthermore, the more adepts there were of the Tenma people, the more compatible this great spell would be, and the more powerful it would be. There were even rumors that the power of this great spell was limitless. Even the most powerful great spell could only be destroyed when it encountered the Galloping 10,000 Horses of the Dharma stage when it was unleashed by dozens of Tenma people. When a great adept and two adepts of the same level as Lu Ping used the Galloping 10,000 Horses together, the power of the great spell multiplied. Even Lu Ping, who had always been calm and collected, could not help but gasp when he saw the Galloping 10,000 Horses Dao soldier formation of the Tenma people, which could be said to be the foundation of the clan. It was rumored that the entire clan of the Tenma people could be included in the Galloping 10,000 Horses Dao soldier formation. If this was true, Even those who had achieved the divine spirit level would have to retreat in front of this Dao soldier formation. If this was on land, Lu Ping could only resist or escape. However, these three Tenma people were currently using the galloping 10,000 horses Dao soldier formation on the surface of the Qingming River. With the help of the mighty river water, the power of the galloping 10,000 horses Dao soldier was originally not inferior to the power on land. However, they had forgotten that Lu Ping had cultivated water elemental spells. In the path of water, Lu Ping's ability could increase by 3 levels for no reason. On land, Lu Ping could not fight against the galloping 10,000 horses Dao soldier. However, on the water, Lu Ping could take drastic measures. The moment the three Tenma people stepped on the river water, they suddenly felt the river water under their feet disappear. Lu Ping had already tried to empty the river water under their feet to weaken the power of the galloping 10,000 horses Dao soldier. Of course, this was just a trick. The galloping 10,000 horses Dao soldier would not be broken so easily unless Lu Ping could drain the Qingming River dry in one breath. Behind Lu Ping, huge waves rolled back and went against the flow. In front of him, the waves surged and rolled down. It was a pincer attack. He could not let the power of the three powers merge into one. Otherwise, once the Dao soldier formation was formed, not only would it completely trap Lu Ping, the power of the Dao soldier formation would also increase. At this moment, Lu Ping pushed the thin water-flowing sword's hilt with one hand, and the huge waves behind him surged into the sky. He had cast the Great River Flowing East sword art. The two swords danced in the air, and with the help of the Qingming River's momentum and Lu Ping's understanding of the Great River Flowing East sword art, he unleashed the full power of the Great River Flowing East sword art. He actually managed to suppress the two heavenly Pegasus cultivators behind him. However, the two Tenma people behind him were only cooperating. The real threatening power was Ma the Great's galloping flood wave. After Lu Ping threw out the dual flying swords behind him, most of his attention was on Ma the Great. As Lu Ping suddenly raised his hands, the water of the Qingming River under his feet suddenly rose by 10 feet. Then, Lu Ping straightened his hands and pushed them upstream. The huge waves of the Qingming River rose against the flow and rose higher and higher. It was as if the Milky Way was flowing in reverse, crashing towards Ma the Great's attack. Innate great power, art of blue waves. However, under the pincer attack, no matter how powerful Lu Ping's power was, it was still beyond his capabilities. Although the two Tenma people's power was suppressed by Lu Ping, Ma the Great still managed to suppress Lu Ping's art of blue wave. The two Tenma people behind him could retreat, but they still guarded Lu Ping's path of retreat. However, Lu Ping couldn't retreat at this moment. He could only take on Ma the Great's attack head-on. Amidst the loud bang, the two huge waves collided with each other. The water splashed in all directions like crystal pearls, creating many deep holes on the embankments on both sides of the river. The water of the Qingming River, which was flowing towards both sides of the river due to the collision of the huge waves, managed to hide from the embankments and swept towards both sides of the river, drowning the flat fields within a radius of a few miles in one fell swoop. A pale color flashed across Lu Ping's face, but soon, it returned to normal. On the other hand, Ma the Great's expression didn't look good either. Although Lu Ping suffered a loss from the pincer attack of the three Tenma people, he still managed to successfully stop the Dao soldier formation of the three Tenma people. Clang! The netherwater sword that was lurking around Lu Ping tried its best to block the horn that was flying towards him. However, at this moment, Lu Ping was in a state where he had used up all his strength but had yet to recover. Although the netherwater sword had managed to block the horn, under the tremendous force, Lu Ping's body was directly knocked into the river, creating a huge ditch that was 10 feet deep and hundreds of feet long on the surface of the river. Taking advantage of the fact that the ditch was filled up by the water, Lu Ping's entire body was already in a sorry state. Don't hold back anymore, lest the night is fraught with trouble. Although the four of them had only exchanged blows for a moment, the commotion caused by it was definitely not small. The cultivation world of the Central Plains was filled with cultivators and there were countless sects. There was no telling when someone would intervene. This was definitely the territory of the human race, so even though the Tenma people were powerful, they might not be welcomed by others. However, just as Ma the Great finished speaking, he saw the corners of Lu Ping's mouth twitch slightly. Ma the Great was slightly startled, and then he heard a loud shout, "Ayayaya, how shameless, 3 against 1. What our Yuan clan hates the most is bullying the few with numbers. Fellow Daoist who uses a sword, our old Yuan clan just so happens to be itching to fight today, so I'll help you block the 2 behind you. You're pretty lucky, remember to owe our old Yuan clan a favor." Ma the Great's expression changed drastically, as if he could already tell who the person was from the voice. He opened his mouth and shouted at the 2 juniors, "Be careful." Then, as if he wanted to say something, he saw that Lu Ping's 2 flying swords had already swept up an earth-shattering sword cry, completely suppressing Ma the Great's voice. After that, the entire Qingming River started to boil. Ma the Great suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a pot of boiling water, and every bubble that emerged from the river could explode into a bunch of sword sparks, as if he was going to be sliced into 1,000 pieces and made into a pot of horsemeat soup. Ma the Great was greatly shocked, and could no longer care about the 2 juniors. He pulled out a horsetail whisk from the space behind him, and swept it in all directions, repelling all the sword sparks that were spreading towards him. When he raised his eyes, his expression instantly became even more unsightly. Just as Lu Ping made his move, an 8-feet-tall giant holding a 10-feet-long wrought copper rod jumped out from nowhere, and swung it down. However, 2 rod shadows flashed in midair, and they fell on the heads of 2 Tenma people, blocking the 2 who were about to attack behind Lu Ping to support Ma the Great. Lu Ping laughed loudly, and said, "Thank you for your help, Brother Yuan. How should I address you, Brother Yuan? When this matter is over, I'll treat you to a drink." The giant was unstoppable, and his wrought copper rod transformed into hundreds of rod shadows in mid-air, firmly encircling the 2 Tenma people cultivators who were at the same level as him. Hearing Lu Ping's words, the giant laughed, and said, "Lu Tianping of the North Sea, I, Old Yuan, know you. I, Old Yuan, will never change my name or my surname. I am Yuan Long of the Great Spiritual Ape Clan. I heard that you're quite capable, and I originally came here to find you for a fight. However, I didn't expect to see you being besieged. You owe me today, so you should treat me to a drink. However, I, Old Yuan, have always been fond of wine. If you can't take out some fine wine, I, Old Yuan, won't be satisfied." The Great Spiritual Ape Clan was indeed the Great Spiritual Ape Clan. Chapter 1181. Looking at the few great adepts who had fought with Lu Ping, Nanyu Laozu had been killed by Lu Ping using the identity of Wen Yuan, while the death of Hanya Laozu was only known to the Longhuai ancestor alone. After that, when he had fought with Chu Yuntian, both parties had merely stopped at the appropriate point. Although Lu Ping had secretly gained the upper hand, even Chu Yuntian himself probably did not know that Lu Ping had held back when he had used the boiling sky sword technique. In other words, up until now, Lu Ping's ability to fight a late Dharma adept had not been known to anyone. But now, the opportunity had come. This battle with Ma Sai the Great was the perfect opportunity for Lu Ping to show off his abilities to the practitioners of Central Plains. Because of the sudden intervention of the spiritual ape Yuan Long, Lu Ping had taken the initiative to use the boiling sky sword technique that he had just mastered, gaining the upper hand in one fell swoop and trapping Ma Sai the Great within the sword realm that was formed by this supreme sword technique. However, without the assistance of the spiritual treasure and the natal Genchen formation, Lu Ping's abilities would undoubtedly be reduced by a third. But Lu Ping was not afraid at all. His pair of flying swords controlled the sword realm tightly and did his best to trap Ma Sai the Great within it. However, Ma Sai the Great was, after all, a late Dharma adept. Born as a Tenma people, he had a strong level of practice. How could he be easily trapped by Lu Ping's techniques? Just as the horsetail whisk had swept open a space within the sword realm, the Pegasus horn had already pierced towards the space within the sword realm. But at this moment, the river water beneath Ma Sai the Great's feet bubbled and a bunch of bubbles rose from the water surface before bursting together. Countless sword auras shot out and instantly cut the space that the horsetail whisk had swept open into pieces. Ma Sai the Great was shocked. He stomped down with both his feet, forming two huge Pegasus legs that were formed from spiritual chi and stomped down. Amidst the crackling sounds, the countless sword auras were all crushed by the spiritual chi legs. The spiritual chi legs were also cut by the sword auras and finally shattered into pieces in the air. Ma Sai the Great let out a muffled groan, and the shoes on his feet suddenly shattered into pieces that fell from mid-air. Another few bubbles appeared. This time, Elder Tian Ma did not dare to use his spiritual chi legs to block the sword auras. Instead, a pair of spiritual chi wings suddenly appeared on his back. Elder Tian Ma's body was abnormally light as he flew in all directions within the sword realm, dodging the fierce sword auras that were coming at him. Stepping on swallows was one of the special techniques of the Tenma people. For a moment, Lu Ping's sword techniques could not keep up with Elder Tian Ma's flying speed. However, the boiling sky sword technique was not something that could be dodged so easily. Just as Elder Tian Ma secretly let out a sigh of relief and was prepared to use all his strength to break Lu Ping's sword techniques, he suddenly felt his entire body start to heat up and his head start to feel dizzy. Could it be because of the sword realm? But for someone like Elder Tian Ma, not to mention a pot of boiling water, even if he was in the depths of a volcano, he might not be able to harm a single hair on his body. How could he be so hot that he fainted? No, it wasn't because of the sword realm, it was because of his spiritual sense. Elder Tian Ma's spiritual sense had been accumulated for nearly 1,000 years and had long become one with his mind. Perhaps the strength of his spiritual sense was not as strong as Lu Ping's, but the familiarity with it was something that Lu Ping's 200 years of experience could not compare to. Thus, when Elder Tian Ma felt that his spiritual sense was being attacked without a sound, even so, Elder Tian Ma did not know how to react to this strange attack. At this moment, Elder Tian Ma's spiritual sense seemed to have seen a ray of light. Was it the light of a fire? Even Ma the Great could not see it clearly for a moment. Then, a wave of intense pain caused Elder Tian Ma to cry out in pain to lessen the pain that came from his soul. Then, a huge bubble appeared in the middle of the Qingming River. It took this opportunity to swallow Ma the Great whole into the bubble. Numerous sword qis burst out. Elder Ma Sai, who was affected by the divine sense attack, could only weave the horsetail whisk into a net in a hurry, firmly protecting himself in it. At the same time, Ma the Great shrunk his spiritual sense as much as possible and even hid it under the protection of his Dharma idol. This way, he was finally able to break free from the restriction of Lu Ping's spiritual sense attack. Amidst the sound of kai kai, the fine strands of the horsetail whisk were cut off by the sword qi. Elder Ma Sai did not dare to be negligent anymore. He stretched out his hand to recall the single-horned spiritual treasure. Then, he abruptly stabbed upwards and broke the bubble. However, the horsetail whisk had become a bald tail. This magic treasure could be said to be completely useless. At this moment, the fourth elder could not care about this magic treasure that was refined from a part of his body. Although he had broken free from the attack of Lu Ping's supreme divine sword technique, he was still trapped in the sword domain. However, the fourth elder had sensed something when he used his natal spiritual treasure to attack randomly in the air. He immediately leapt up and swung his horn upwards. A huge Pegasus had appeared behind the fourth elder, and the horn just happened to land on the head of the Pegasus. The heavenly horse leapt up and let out a long neigh towards the sky. Then, it suddenly charged upwards, and the single horn on its head grew larger and larger. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the sword domain all gathered towards the single horn, and then formed a huge single horn in midair. Amidst the loud bang, Lu Ping felt the thin water unstoppable sword tremble violently. It was almost out of Lu Ping's control. Then, Lu Ping flew back and saw the sword domain formed by the dual flying swords in front of him suddenly break. Ma the Great followed behind a huge Pegasus idol and broke out of the encirclement. Once again, it was the Pegasus clan's heirloom's great skill, the sky-piercing. But after Elder Ma Sai summoned his Pegasus avatar and combined it with the single-horned spiritual treasure, the power of the skill was like a tiger that had grown wings. It actually broke through Lu Ping's peerless sword skill. However, just as Ma the Great broke out of the encirclement, there was suddenly a slight airflow in the air. Immediately, the fourth elder, who had just released his divine will from his body, changed his expression. This was because Lu Ping's supreme divine sword technique was a kind of secret magical power that coexisted with swordsmanship and divine will. Under the attack of Lu Ping's powerful divine will, even the fourth elder, who was at the late Dharma stage, had no choice but to retract his divine will. It was only under the protection of the Pegasus idol that he was able to escape the tracking of his divine will. It was precisely because of this that before he broke through Lu Ping's sword domain, Ma the Great did not dare to release his divine will. And in the moment that he broke out of the encirclement, he did not notice that Lu Ping had already hidden the water-seer formless sword. By the time the fourth elder released his divine will and sensed the strange fluctuations in the air around him, it was already too late. The water-seer sword was already 3 feet in front of him, heading straight for his face. In his desperation, the fourth elder only had time to summon his protective magical power. At the same time, black hair suddenly grew from the back of his neck and stretched forward to entangle the water-seer sword. However, although the shapeless sword technique was mainly used for sneak attacks, it was still a powerful magical sword technique after all. How could it not be used to fight head-on? The moment the water-seer sword appeared, 5 sword shadows flashed out in a row. The long black hair that was entangling the water-seer sword was instantly twisted into a mess. Then, the water-seer sword pierced through 9 layers of protective gang chi and broke through the fourth elder's protective magical power. It was a pity that the water-seer sword was already at the end of its flight after breaking through the fourth elder's Pegasus idol and his protective magical power. It only managed to blind Ma the Great's left eye before it could advance any further. The Pegasus single horn smashed down and knocked the water-seer sword away. With only one eye left, Ma the Great glared fiercely at Lu Ping but did not dare to fight him again. Instead, he suddenly turned and flew towards the west. At the same time, the Pegasus single horn suddenly shot out. With a series of clangs, the spiritual ape's rod net that was blocking the 2 mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people was suddenly broken. 2 figures flew out from the gap and followed closely behind Ma the Great as they flew towards the west. "Hey, our old Yuan hasn't had his fun yet, why are you running away?" Suddenly having his magical power broken by Ma the Great and letting his 2 opponents escape, the spiritual ape Yuan Long was greatly disappointed. He could not help but shout, "Coward, if you have the guts, then let's see who's the winner before you leave." Immediately after, the spiritual ape suddenly changed his target and said to Lu Ping, "I say, why did you let that old horse go? You didn't even give old Yuan a chance to fight." Lu Ping did not know whether to laugh or cry. He spread his hands and said, "After all, he is a grand adept. If he has made up his mind to leave, how can I stop him?" A grand adept had been defeated in a fair and square battle with Lu Ping. Even one of his eyes was blinded. This was a legendary moment in the entire world of cultivation. Now, this spiritual ape was actually complaining that Lu Ping had interrupted his fun. However, Lu Ping immediately understood this fellow's purpose. The spiritual ape rolled his eyes and a silly smile flashed across his rough face. He said, "Hehe, our old Yuan helped you by stopping those 2 horses. Now that you've interrupted our fun, it's time for you to return the favor. Come, let's have a fight first." After saying that, Yuan Long stretched out his hand and summoned his 1,000-pound rod. He got into a stance and was about to attack. Lu Ping quickly waved his hand and said, Wait. We were first surrounded by 3 Tenma people, and then we had a huge battle with a grand adept elder of the Tenma people. How much strength do we have left now? Don't tell me that your old Yuan family takes advantage of others when they are down." Yuan Long was instantly enraged. He patted his chest and said, "Nonsense. Just because of what you said, our old Yuan family will have a fight with you. However, our old Yuan family has always been fair. I'll give you a few days to recuperate. When you've recovered, we'll have a good fight again." Lu Ping knew that the spiritual ape family had always been stubborn. This battle would most likely be unavoidable. Thus, he could only say helplessly, "Fine. It's just that the battle here has definitely attracted the attention of many people. We can't stay here for long." Yuan Long chuckled strangely and said, "It just so happens that our old Yuan family is also tired. Let's rest on your black tortoise for a while." old Yuan family remembers that you once said that you would treat us to wine. However, let me say this first. If the wine isn't good, don't blame us for making fun of you. Chapter 1182. If the fact that Lu Ping had the green sea snake by his side and that his battle with Chu Yuntian had caused the training community of Central Plains to acknowledge Lu Ping's strength and reputation, then his battle with the fourth elder of the Tenma people, where he not only defeated him but also blinded one of his eyes, had caused a huge uproar in the training community. Previously, other than the heirs of the Holy Lands who had fought with Lu Ping, the rest of the people still had doubts about the true strength of this North Sea practitioner. After all, when Lu Ping had fought with these heirs of the Holy Lands, most of the time, he had stopped at the right moment or even ended in a draw. As for these heirs who had fought with Lu Ping before, no matter how arrogant they were, their evaluation of Lu Ping's true strength was that he was not inferior to a certain family. Although this statement was vague, it was definitely not wrong. Many people could naturally sense that Lu Ping had more or less held back when he fought with them, but there was no reason for them to help Lu Ping. Moreover, these practitioners had their own thoughts. If one day, there was a practitioner whose strength was similar to theirs who became enemies with this Lu Tianping, wouldn't it be a happy thing if they were to suffer a huge loss at the hands of this fellow because they had misjudged his strength? It was precisely because of this that it was difficult for the training community of Central Plains to determine the true strength of Lu Ping. After a long time, they naturally thought that Lu Ping was deliberately hiding his strength, and that his true strength might not be that high. Now that Qing Mingjiang and the fourth elder of the Tenma people had a fair and square victory, those who had previously doubted Lu Ping's strength were instantly silenced. It was not that there were no examples of a mid-Dharma adept challenging a late Dharma adept, and there were even many who could fight with a late Dharma adept and retreat unscathed. However, there had been no one who could win a battle since Xiao Baiyu, the sky-splitting sword saint from 300 to 400 years ago. Furthermore, the fourth elder of the Heavenly Pegasus clan was not someone ordinary people could compare to. He was a genuine great divine ability cultivator, a top expert in the cultivation world. Meanwhile, Lu Ping was still traveling upstream along the Azure Netherworld River. On the broad back of the black tortoise, Yuan Long wrinkled his nose and glanced at the black tortoise beneath his feet. Then, he said to Lu Ping, "You have part of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline. I heard that you have 3 little green sea snakes following you. If I didn't know that you're Lu Tianping of the Northern Sea, I'm afraid that ordinary people would think that you're a cultivator from the spirit-taming sect." After Lu Dagui had merged with part of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline, although his own potential had increased significantly, he still could not perfectly hide the aura of the tyrannical tortoise's bloodline within his body. Therefore, it was very easy for others to notice that he was hiding something. Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. With a flip of his hand, Linglong's wine cauldron appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Then, it floated in mid-air and suddenly expanded. Linglong climbed out of the wine cauldron. Lu Ping first glanced at Yuan Long, then said to Lu Ping in a bad mood, "Why did you call Linglong out? Don't you know that Linglong is preparing for her second thunder trial? This is not a time to disturb her." Yuan Long's eyes widened the moment Linglong's wine cauldron appeared. When he saw Linglong emerge from the wine cauldron, his eyes shone brightly and his face darkened. Lu Ping did not pay much attention to Yuan Long's expression. Instead, he said to Linglong, "I know that you have improved very quickly. However, without me to help you summon the thunder trial, how will you become a second tribulation spirit treasure? If you want to pass the thunder trial, you will have a lot of time to prepare. When you are completely prepared, we can summon the thunder trial. However, we have guests now. First, take out a few of your treasured spirit wines. I will use them to entertain the guest." Linglong had been by Lu Ping's side all these years. It could be said that she had collected and brewed quite a lot of spirit wines. Normally, only Lu Ping would drink them to his heart's content. In addition, only his followers, such as Dabao, could benefit from it. Naturally, the rest of his friends would only give him a limited amount of spirit wine. Therefore, Linglong had collected quite a lot. Is this the imitation spirit treasure of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth? A surprised voice came from the spiritual ape beside Lu Ping. He could not help but ask. Lu Ping was stunned. Only then did he notice that Yuan Long's expression was a little strange. He could not help but nod and say, "Indeed, I once found Linglong in the Yingtian dojo. Since then, Linglong has been by my side." Back then, the North Sea cultivators had gathered in the Yingtian mountain range and secretly entered the Yingtian dojo. They had unearthed the inheritance of the Yingtian faction. More than 100 years had passed since then. Although the secret back then was not known by everyone in the cultivation world of the Central Plains, there was no longer a need to hide it. Therefore, Lu Ping had to admit that he was very carefree. Moreover, in the cultivation world of the North Sea, there had been many rumors about Zhenling's rise over the years. Among them, there was a widely spread view among the major sects. That was, when all the sects had gathered in the Yingtian dojo, the biggest secret had been obtained by Zhenling alone. It was precisely because of this that Zhenling soared to the sky, leaving the various sects in the North Sea far behind. Even Lu Ping's rise was believed by many to be due to him obtaining the inheritance of the Yingtian faction. Zhenling naturally did not explain anything about this. When everyone had entered the Yingtian dojo together, even if Zhenling had obtained all the benefits, it was still due to Zhenling's own ability and luck. How could the other sects not have obtained the Linglong wine cauldron and the mountain-splitting axe? How could they not have obtained the abundant void mirror, the medium-sized spirit stone vein, and the Dharma form soul? The Yingtian faction. Back then, it was said that the Yingtian faction had indeed created a replica of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. I didn't expect it to be this wine cauldron. Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. Yuan Long said it was not bad, but there was a hint of regret in his eyes. Lu Ping had seen it clearly from the side, but Yuan Long did not deliberately point it out. Lu Ping was not in a position to ask directly, so he only gestured for Linglong to take out a few fine wines from her collection. No matter what, if Yuan Long had not stepped in to fend off the two mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people at the last moment, it would have been difficult for Lu Ping and Ma Sai the Great to even escape unscathed from this battle, let alone emerge victorious. As such, Lu Ping was more than willing to pay for this wine. Oh, the 100-flower dew. The brewing of this wine requires top-grade spirit flowers to be brewed using a secret technique. If the secret technique is used but the spirit flowers are not old enough, the quality of the wine will be greatly reduced. Yuan Long's eyes lit up when he saw the first jar of wine that Lu Ping took out. However, it was obvious that he did not believe that Lu Ping would be able to gather 100 types of spirit flower dew of sufficient age. This 100-flower dew did not mean that he could just randomly find 100 types of spirit flowers. There were only a few hundred types of spirit flowers that could be used to brew this 100-flower dew, and each type of spirit flower was considered rare among spirit herbs. It was not easy to gather all of them. Of course, if one did not care about the age of the spirit flowers, it would be much easier. When Lu Ping heard Yuan Long's question, he did not refute it. He only opened the seal on the jar of wine, and the rich aroma of the spirit flower wine made Yuan Long salivate. However, this was just the beginning. In a short while, Lu Ping took out another 10 jars of spirit wine from the wine cauldron. Some were big, some were small, some were big, some were small. Every jar of spirit wine made Yuan Long's eyes light up. However, just 5 days later, Yuan Long, as usual, poured a small jar of spirit wine into the mouth of a core forging adept. It was enough to shorten their training time by 2 months. He shouted, "Good wine, really good wine. In these 3 days, I, old Yuan, have drunk all the good wine that I have not tasted in the past 300 to 400 years. When I return to the northern ice plains, let's see who dares to compete with me in drinking more spirit wine." Lu Ping looked at Yuan Long's excited expression, and the corner of his eye twitched. He had long heard that the wise great apes were the best at drinking, but he did not expect that in just 3 days, Yuan Long would have drunk almost 20 types of spirit wine that he had specially prepared. One had to know that this spirit brew was not ordinary. Apart from the rich spirit qi contained within it, which required the practitioner to spend a lot of time to refine, the alcohol was also extremely potent. Even if a normal Dharma adept drank too much of it, he or she would inevitably experience dizziness and confusion. However, this giant ape in front of him was obviously not affected by this. In fact, in the short span of 5 days, he had drunk more than 20 types of spirit wine. Yet, Lu Ping did not feel any spiritual qi leaking out of Yuan Long's body. However, the spirit wine contained so much spiritual qi that even Lu Ping himself could not completely refine it in a short span of 5 days. This meant that the giant ape in front of him must have a secret technique that allowed him to temporarily store spiritual qi as a backup. It was a good thing that Lu Ping had been careful. Among the 20 types of spirit wine, Lu Ping had only taken a small portion of each. If not for this, from Lu Ping's point of view, Yuan Long was obviously drinking as much as he could. Furthermore, Yuan Long was not a glutton. Every time he finished drinking a type of spirit wine, he would give an evaluation of the spirit wine. This evaluation was very appropriate for Lu Ping, who had participated in the brewing of the spirit wine. Furthermore, Yuan Long had another skill, and that was that every time he drank a type of spirit wine, he would be able to clearly describe the spirit herbs used to brew the spirit wine, and even the age of the spirit herbs. This made Lu Ping very impressed. Yuan Long drank to his heart's content, and he smashed the jar of spirit wine in his hand onto the black tortoise's back. After that, he pointed at Lu Ping and roared with laughter. "Ha ha, Lu Tianping of the North Sea, 5 days is enough for you to recuperate and build up your strength. Today, we'll decide the victor between us." Lu Ping was astounded, and he smiled. "Brother Yuan, you've drunk so much spirit wine. It wouldn't be too late for us to compete after you've refined the spirit energy in the wine." Yuan Long's expression turned solemn as he said, "Brother Lu, it's enough to show that you have an outstanding disposition. However, Brother Lu doesn't understand our great ape clan well enough." Lu Ping said curiously, "Oh, I'd like to hear the details." Yuan Long grinned and said, "If an ordinary person were to drink so much fine wine in such a short period of time, they'd need at least 10 days to properly cultivate. However, our great ape clan's battle prowess increases the more fine wine we drink. Not only does that fine wine not weaken our strength in the slightest, it actually increases it greatly. So, Brother Lu, feel free to make your move." Lu Ping didn't know about this, and he smiled. Just as he was about to say something, Yuan Long unexpectedly smashed his club towards his head. He said with a smile, "Brother Lu, you'd better be careful. Our great ape clan doesn't care about who moves first. Once we start fighting, I'm sure we'll try to seize the initiative." The club's power was so great that even Lu Ping didn't dare to take it head-on. However, Lu Ping didn't dodge. Under Yuan Long's astonished gaze, the Lu Ping before him was suddenly smashed into pieces, and then turned into a puddle of water that flowed down the black tortoise's shell. The art of crossing the sea and heaven was being executed right in front of the great ape clan's eyes, and this Yuan Long actually didn't notice it in the slightest. However, Lu Ping had already appeared in the air 300 feet away. His pair of flying swords drew a streak of light in the air, and directly aimed for Yuan Long's neck. He smiled and said, "It's impolite not to reciprocate. Brother Yuan, take this sword of mine." Chapter 1183. The great intelligent apes were famous for 2 hobbies in the cultivation world. The first was that they valued wine as much as their life. In the cultivation world, no matter what kind of fine wine there was, they would rarely fail to recognize it. There had even been incidents in the cultivation world where sects and clans were exterminated because of a fine wine that the great intelligent apes had never tasted or heard of before. Their ultimate goal was simply to obtain that fine wine, or to see that fine wine that they had never seen before. The second was that they were madly addicted to battle. The great intelligent apes respected but never feared the strong. Moreover, they loved to challenge the strong in the cultivation world. They never killed the innocent, but they would use all kinds of workable or unworkable reasons to start a fight or join a fight. Therefore, the number of the great intelligent apes might be slightly inferior to that of the green sea snake race and the 5 elements peacock race, but they never lacked in the number of strong cultivators. They even had a little more than the other top demon clans. However, if one believed that the great intelligent apes were crude and unintelligent, then all those who held this kind of thinking would definitely suffer a great loss at the hands of the great intelligent apes. The reason why the great intelligent apes were called wise was because of their intelligence. Do not be fooled by the appearance of the great intelligent apes. Even if they took human form, they were usually strong giants, just like Yuan Long, who was currently fighting against Lu Ping. They looked simple and honest, but if that was really the case, the great intelligent apes would have been destroyed countless times by the cultivation world that was full of deception. How could they become one of the top forces in the cultivation world, one of the few large demon clans that could rival the 6 holy lands of the human race? Just like now, the great intelligent apes had given Lu Ping 5 days to recuperate, but he had also taken the opportunity to drink all the spiritual wine that Lu Ping had collected. Although the spiritual wine could not be converted into an increase in Yuan Long's cultivation in a short period of time, he could use a secret technique to store pure spiritual qi that could be refined into vital essence at any time. In the long run, the pure spiritual qi was naturally the most suitable to be used to improve one's cultivation. However, in the short run, the pure spiritual qi could be used to quickly replenish the consumption of vital essence and could also be used to prolong a cultivator's fighting time. Yuan Long knew very well that although he was looking forward to fighting against Lu Ping, after witnessing Lu Ping blinding one of the eyes of the great cultivator Tenma people, he clearly realized the gap between them. If they were to really fight, Yuan Long would most likely lose. However, the more this was so, the more the blood of the great ape flowing in his veins boiled, and the more he longed for this battle. The spiritual qi contained in the fine spiritual wine was the biggest bargaining chip to prolong his fight against Lu Ping of the time. Even if he wasn't a match for Lu Tianping, he still had to fight. The longer he persisted in the hands of an expert, the more he would be able to obtain. So, since Lu Tianping wanted to treat him to a drink, then he would think of a way to drink to his heart's content before the battle. Yuan Long succeeded, but in the end, he still failed. The two of them battled above the Qingming River for 6 hours. During the last 2 hours, Yuan Long even realized that Lu Ping had gone easy on Lu Ping so that Yuan Long could enjoy the battle to his heart's content. On the other hand, Yuan Long was so engrossed in the battle that he didn't notice Lu Ping's presence at all. 6 hours later, Yuan Long's limbs were tied up by Lu Ping's Qingming River water. Taking advantage of the moment when Yuan Long broke free, the invisible water sword touched Yuan Long's forehead, and the long sword disappeared again. Awesome, awesome. The great ape wise did not have the slightest regret after losing. Instead, he shouted in joy. For the great ape wise who loved to fight, a hearty battle was more important than winning or losing. This was also the reason why the great ape wise's great master, Pure Yang Laozu Yuan Pokong, liked to fight in groups. With the methods of this Yuan Pokong Laozu, it was very difficult to find an opponent in a one-on-one fight in the world of cultivation. Only in a group fight could he find some satisfaction. The two of them landed on the back of the black tortoise. The great ape wise scratched the back of his head, and a 1-foot-tall stone jar appeared in his hand. Yuan Long patted the stone jar with his fan-sized palm and said, "I, old Yuan, have drunk so much wine from you, brother Lu, and I feel very sorry. Fortunately, I still have a jar of the great ape wise's top treasure, monkey wine. I want to treat you to a drink." When Lu Ping heard it was monkey wine, his eyes immediately lit up. He asked curiously, "Is it really monkey wine? It's an incredible treasure in the world of cultivation." Yuan Long smiled complacently and said, "Isn't that so? Although our brilliant ape clan has monkey wine, the production is extremely limited. With our old Yuan status, it's already not easy to get a small jug every 10 years. Lu Ping looked at the 1-foot-tall stone jar in Yuan Long's hand and hesitated. 10 years for a small jar. How many years did it take for Yuan Long to save up such a big jar? Should I take it easy later? I don't want to drink all of his treasure. However, this monkey wine is a rare treasure in the world of cultivation that can strengthen the muscles and bones. It has an obvious effect on a cultivator's physical body. It would be a pity if I missed this golden opportunity, but, immediately after, Lu Ping felt that his previous hesitation had been thrown out the window. Yuan Long continued, "But this jar is different. It was stolen from our former general before we left the North Icefields. In the past, we might not have been willing to invite Brother Lu to drink with us. But this time, we can drink to our heart's content. Haha, good. In that case, I have no choice but to accept. It just so happens that I'm also drooling over the world's famous monkey wine, the former general of the Great Ape Wise. Wasn't that the pure young Laozu Yuan Pokong who loved to fight in groups? No wonder Yuan Long was able to find such a big jar of monkey wine. Since that was the case, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. That monkey wine was really a rare treasure. As soon as the cup of monkey wine entered his mouth, the sweet aroma of the wine contained a strong fiery nature. It was as if a mouthful of lava had flowed down his throat and suddenly burst into flames, burning his limbs and bones. Lu Ping could even clearly feel the heat of the flames on his body. Good wine, this is really good wine. This feeling of comfort made Lu Ping exclaim in delight. He couldn't help but drink another cup of monkey wine. At this time, Yuan Long, who was watching from the side, felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife when he saw Lu Ping drinking cup after cup. However, the Great Ape Wise had always been forthright, especially when they met a good friend with a similar temperament. Therefore, although the Great Ape Wise felt his heart ache for the monkey wine, he was also happy to see Lu Ping drinking to his heart's content. However, other than the Great Ape Wise, no one else would be able to understand this contradictory mentality. Every time Lu Ping drank a cup of monkey wine, the time between each cup was very long. This was so that he would have enough time to refine the medicinal spiritual qi in the wine. Fortunately, the two of them weren't drinking for the sake of drinking. From time to time, they would discuss the Tao and interact with each other. During this period of time, apart from the previous battle, the two of them could be considered to have benefited greatly. They drank this jar of monkey wine for 2 whole days, but they still only drank 2/3 of it. In the end, when Lu Ping saw that Yuan Long's face had turned green, he was secretly amused. However, even if Lu Ping drank the rest of the monkey wine, it wouldn't be of any help to the strengthening of his body in the short term. Only then did he say, "Ah, what a pity, what a pity. This monkey wine can be said to be the best wine in the world. It's a pity that I can't drink anymore." Naturally, Yuan Long refused. Although his heart ached for the wine, he valued this good friend in front of him more. Naturally, he tried his best to dissuade Lu Ping from drinking all the wine. However, Lu Ping used the excuse that he couldn't drink anymore and refused to drink anymore. Helplessly, Yuan Long put the jar of monkey wine behind him. At this time, Lu Ping said, "Brother Yuan, I see that although your 1,000-pound staff is quite powerful, it seems to lack some variation. May I know why?" Great intelligent apes like to use staffs as their magic weapons. This was because of ape Taoist's divine iron staff. However, the great intelligent ape clan staffs were known to have many variations, such as length and size. However, the 1,000-pound staff in Yuan Long's hand was definitely powerful enough, but it lacked many variations. This piqued Lu Ping's curiosity. When Yuan Long heard Lu Ping mention his life treasure, he couldn't help but sigh. He said, "Because I was young and frivolous, I wholeheartedly wanted to survive the Thunder Tribulation and become a life treasure. In the end, I still lacked some foundation. Although I successfully survived the Thunder Tribulation in the end, the life treasure's source was slightly lacking. It was powerful enough, but it had to sacrifice various variations." Lu Ping said curiously, "The source of a life treasure can't be compared to a person's source. The lack of source doesn't mean that it's damaged. It can be made up by smelting rare treasures." Although Lu Ping wasn't very proficient in the Tao of smithing, at his level, he still had a lot of experience. Yuan Long smiled wryly and said, "How can it be so easy to obtain rare treasures? This time, I, old Yuan, have followed the cultivators of my clan to travel the Central Plains, and one of our objectives is to find a rare treasure that can supplement the essence of this staff. Otherwise, not only will this spirit treasure lack many transformations, it will also be extremely difficult for it to improve further in the future." Lu Ping nodded. He pondered for a moment and didn't say anything else. Just as Yuan Long was about to bid farewell, Lu Ping suddenly said happily, "I've got it. Brother Yuan, Why don't you take a look and see if this thing can help your 1,000-pound staff? Yuan Long was startled. When his gaze fell on the item in Lu Ping's hand, his eyes immediately emitted 2 rays of blue light. The light flashed and Yuan Long immediately shouted, "It's actually this thing. Qianji quicksand iron. Is this thing really Qianji quicksand iron?" Lu Ping was slightly startled when he saw the 2 rays of blue light in Yuan Long's eyes. This blue light was also the Tripure True Pupils. However, the inheritance of the Tripure True Pupils was divided into 3 branches, namely the Tai Ching True Pupils, Jade Pure True Pupils, and Prime Clear Pupils. Each of the 3 branches had their own merits and were evenly matched. Yuan Long's blue light was obviously cultivated in the Prime Clear Pupils branch, while Lu Ping's was cultivated in the Jade Pure Pupils branch. The only difference was that Lu Ping had already cultivated this branch to great success, while Yuan Long clearly hadn't found the 9 types of suitable heaven and earth water. Chapter 1184. The True Pupils of the 3 Pure Ones was originally a magical technique passed down by Ape Taoist. Even Zhenling was able to obtain the inheritance of the True Pupils of the Jade Pure by chance. As the direct descendant of Ape Taoist, it was not surprising that the Great Ape Clan possessed all the inheritance of the True Pupils of the 3 Pure Ones. However, when Yuan Long confirmed that the bowl in Lu Ping's hand that looked like fine sand but was actually flowing in the jade bowl at all times was really the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron, Yuan Long's heart suddenly felt like it was being scratched by the claws of a mouse. He could not calm down for even a moment and circled around the bowl of treasure in Lu Ping's hand. At this time, Yuan Long revealed the nature of the Great Ape Clan. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It is indeed the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron. I also obtained this item by chance, but it is not very useful to me. Since Brother Yuan needs it, I will give it to you." This bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron was a treasure Lu Ping obtained from Nanu Laozu. Although it was a metal spiritual material, it flowed everywhere like water. It was a rare treasure in the cultivation world and was the favorite item of the Great Ape Clan to forge their own natal spiritual treasure. Usually, the Great Ape Clan's natal spiritual treasure only needed a little bit of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron to enhance their own treasures. If the bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron that Lu Ping gave to Yuan Long was used sparingly in the past, it was enough to forge 3 to 5 spiritual treasure level treasures. Now, it was completely given to Yuan Long. Yuan Long was startled and hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no, this is a rare treasure in the world. It is something that can only be found by chance. I can't accept it." Lu Ping's face turned serious and said, "Brother Yuan, you and I hit it off at first sight. There is no reason to refuse a gift from a friend. Moreover, you have already treated me to the world's unparalleled monkey wine. Giving you this bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is a courtesy to reciprocate. If you refuse, does it mean that you do not recognize me as a friend?" Yuan Long was stunned and said, "That is not the case. This 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is. Hey, be careful." Before Yuan Long could finish his words, he saw the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron in Lu Ping's palm flying towards him. Yuan Long hurriedly and carefully caught the jade bowl, fearing that the quicksand iron inside would spill out. Lu Ping said, "Brother Yuan, there is no need to say more. This 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron is yours. Otherwise, we can't even be friends." Yuan Long vigorously scratched his head and looked at the bowl of 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron in his hand. He wanted to refuse, but he really couldn't bear to part with it. So, as if he had made up his mind, he took out the jar of monkey wine from behind his head and said, "Brother Lu, to tell you the truth, I really want this 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron, but I can't take this treasure of yours for free. Please don't look down on this jar of monkey wine. In the future, it will be good to leave it as a reward for the disciples of the clan." Lu Ping laughed and said, "All right, I will accept this. This monkey wine is also a rare treasure in the world. It may not be inferior to the 1,000 opportunity quicksand iron." Yuan Long understood in his heart that although the monkey wine could be considered a rare treasure of the world, as long as the intelligent great ape clan existed, the monkey wine could be produced in an endless supply even though it was little. As for the 1,000-chance quicksand iron, it was something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Why was the former General Yuan Pokong able to become the head of the 4 great generals of the Great Ape Clan? It was all because of the Qianji quicksand iron that Yuan Pokong had snatched from Xiao Baiyu that year, which was forged into the spiritual treasure phantom cudgel. When Yuan Pokong fought with the other 3 generals of the spiritual Great Ape Clan, he was actually able to fight against 3 of them and escape unscathed. Of course, it was said that Yuan Pokong also paid a great price for this. He was chased by Xiao Baiyu and beaten miserably. In the end, he fled back to the North Ice Field in a sorry state. From then on, the 2 could be said to have formed a grudge. Yuan Long pondered for a moment and then said to Lu Ping in a serious manner, "Brother Lu, when I was drinking with you earlier, I seem to have heard that your treasured cauldron of heaven and earth replica is preparing to undergo the second thunder tribulation." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat and he retracted his smile. "That's right. Ling Long has been accumulating quite a bit of strength over the years. I think she has a high chance of surviving the second lightning tribulation." "What's wrong, Brother Yuan? Did you notice anything wrong?" The treasured cauldron of heaven and earth in Taoist Ape's hands could regulate the world's spirit veins. It was one of the 6 great divine weapons of heaven and earth. As the direct descendants of Taoist Ape, it was normal for the Great Ape Clan to have some understanding of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. Sure enough, Yuan Long nodded and said, "Brother Lu, your treasured cauldron of Linglong has indeed accumulated a lot of resources. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for it to survive the second thunder tribulation. However, if Linglong survives the thunder tribulation, the effect of her basic control over the formation of spirit veins will at most double that of the first thunder tribulation. The treasured cauldron of heaven and earth can regulate the world's spirit veins. Even if this replica is inferior to the original, it is still far inferior." Lu Ping thought that there was indeed something fishy about it. He hurriedly said, "Brother Yuan, please teach me." Yuan Long shook his head and said, "I'm not teaching you. I'm just reminding you. One of the important reasons why the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth can regulate and gather the world's spirit veins is that there seems to be a suppressive object in the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. This artifact can maximize the effect of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth in gathering the world's spirit veins. If the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth wants to completely condense the spirit veins into one and hide them in the earth's vein without collapsing, it needs this treasure in the treasured cauldron to finally suppress and condense it. Otherwise, with the current power of Linglong's wine cauldron, it can easily control and condense small or micro spirit veins. However, if it wants to condense a medium spirit vein, even if Linglong survives the second thunder tribulation, it may not be able to do it. Lu Ping was puzzled. "Brother Yuan, Linglong once helped me control large spirit veins. If she survives the second thunder tribulation, she should be able to control a large spirit vein on her own, right?" In fact, Linglong did not only control a large spirit vein. On Filing Mountain, Linglong even helped Lu Ping control 7 large spirit veins in one go to help him break through to the Dharma realm. Yuan Long smiled and was about to explain, but unexpectedly, at this time, Linglong jumped out from behind Lu Ping and said, "He is right. Controlling and condensing spirit veins are not the same thing." Lu Ping naturally knew that Linglong really agreed with what Yuan Long said. However, he was still a little puzzled, so he could only look at Yuan Long with a questioning gaze. However, at this time, Linglong continued to say, "Right now, I can control large spirit veins and can condense small and micro spirit veins. These are all not bad, and after the thunder tribulation, I can even condense medium spirit veins. However, medium spirit veins will only condense when Linglong's real body is around. Once the real body leaves, the spirit veins will lose their suppression and will automatically collapse. However, the spirit veins that the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth condensed in the world will not collapse. They will condense as one with the earth veins. This is the biggest difference between a replica and a heaven-breaking artifact." Lu Ping finally understood a little and said, "In other words, after Linglong survives the second thunder tribulation, even if she can condense a medium spirit vein from the earth veins, this spirit vein will only exist under Linglong's suppression. Once Linglong's real body leaves, this spirit vein will automatically collapse and return to the earth veins. Yuan Long nodded and said, exactly. In fact, in the world of cultivation, there are many spirit veins that the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth's imitation spirit treasures have gathered. These spirit veins are collectively known as the void spirit veins. Because the gathered spirit veins have never been able to condense and form, in order to be able to release the imitation spirit treasures from the void spirit veins, there are alchemists in the world of cultivation who have created a type of spirit-gathering Dharma treasure to suppress the void spirit veins and release the imitation spirit treasures of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth. A spirit-gathering Dharma treasure. Lu Ping had seen such a Dharma treasure before. Years ago, on the Silver Sword Island in the East Sea of Skyrend, there had been a private trade fair. At that time, Lu Ping, who was still an early-stage core forging cultivator, had followed Liang Shenfeng and Laozu, who were in the late-stage core forging realm. This spirit-gathering Dharma treasure was a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure, but there were only 2 spirit-gathering Dharma treasures condensed on it. Although a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure was just a Dharma treasure, it was not easy to refine. It could be said that it was second only to a heavenly abode Dharma treasure of the same rank. However, such a Dharma treasure was only refined to imprison a medium spirit vein. Moreover, after the spirit vein was sealed and suppressed, a cultivator had to constantly look after it, otherwise, it could still cause the spirit vein to flow away. However, even such a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure caused Liang Shenfeng to secretly follow the person who bid for it. He wanted to kill the person and take the treasure for himself. From this, one could see the importance of a spirit-gathering Dharma treasure to a sect. Lu Ping finally understood the problem, so he asked, Brother Yuan, do you know what treasure is used to suppress the spirit vein in the wine cauldron of heaven and earth? Yuan Long shook his head helplessly. I'm not too sure about this. However, according to ancient legends, the treasure used to suppress the spirit vein in the wine cauldron of heaven and earth should be a tower. A tower? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but his expression was still one of surprise. Yuan Long nodded, that's right, it's a pagoda. However, I don't know what this pagoda looks like or how it was refined. Perhaps the old geezers of the wise Great Ape clan might know a bit more, but I'm afraid that it involves the secrets of our Great Ape clan. I'm afraid that even if Brother Lu wants these secrets, those old geezers won't tell you. Lu Ping revealed a slightly regretful expression and said, I naturally understand this principle. If it was me, then I would absolutely not tell anyone who wants to exchange for the secret of the wine cauldron, no matter how high the price is. Yuan Long nodded and said, it's good that Brother Lu is aware of it. Perhaps the secret of Linglong's advancement might not be known only by our clan. Whether Brother Lu can obtain information about the tower in the future will depend on Brother Lu's luck. Not long after, Yuan Long bid farewell to Lu Ping and headed southwest. According to Yuan Long, he was originally going to the southwest. It was said that after the battle of the 9 pure young great ancestors at Qingming River, the peacock royalty of the Endless Mountain and the Lingyun Valley weren't peaceful anymore. He was going there to find someone to fight, but he encountered the disturbance caused by Lu Ping on the Qingming River, so he postponed his trip to the southwest and specially came to fight with Lu Ping. Chapter 1185. Looking at Yuan Long's receding figure, Linglong, who was behind Lu Ping, couldn't help asking, Brother, is the pagoda that the big monkey mentioned to help Linglong suppress and condense the spiritual vein Beijing Tower? Lu Ping spread his hands and said, How do I know? I just learned today that there is a suppressing treasure in the treasure cauldron of heaven and earth. Beijing Tower is just a guess. Even if it is true, how can Beijing Tower help you suppress the spiritual vein? I don't know whether your body and Beijing Tower are one or not. Linglong looked very frustrated and said, Well, I'm afraid the thunder punishment will be delayed again. Lu Ping knocked her head and said with a smile, Don't be discontented. This is a good thing. If you can really figure out the secret of the treasure cauldron of heaven and earth, you will get a great deal. Although Lu Ping comforted Linglong, he wasn't sure if 8 Scenic Pavilion had anything to do with Linglong. At the very least, the two didn't seem to have anything to do with each other. However, Lu Ping felt that it was too much of a coincidence that they both came from Ying Tian Dojo at the same time. After putting away Linglong, Lu Ping said goodbye to Black Tortoise and continued to go upstream along the Qingming River. At this time, he was in the central region, so it was impossible for him to go back to Beihai to see what the relationship between Beijing Tower and Linglong's wine cauldron was. Regardless of whether or not he could find the connection between the two, even if he could, the Beijing Tower was now one of the most important treasures of Zhenling sect. It was the most important training ground for Zhenling sect's disciples. At the same time, it was also the place where disciples who made mistakes would be punished. Thus, it could not be touched easily. As the longest river in the central region, the Qingming River happened to be the section from Zhoushuan Tower to Magic Cloud City. After several years, Lu Ping was finally closer to the starting point of the middle section of the Qingming River. Although the Qingming River was long, it was not so long that it took Black Tortoise several years to finish it. It was because Lu Ping was hindered by various unexpected accidents on the way that he finally entered the territory of Zhoushuan Tower. Since leaving the Magic Cloud City, Lu Ping had been through a series of battles and drifted on the Qingming River for a period of time. He had already gained a new understanding of the Great River East sword technique. Now, he was practicing swordsmanship on the back of the Black Tortoise, trying to separate a brand new set of swordsmanship from the general principle of the Great River East sword technique. However, Lu Ping's luck was clearly not very good. Just as he was concentrating on practicing his swordsmanship, a beam of light fell from the 9 heavens and grabbed at Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping's expression did not change. The dual flying swords in his hands suddenly made a Milky Way surging, which seemed to roll up the Milky Way. Even the water of the Qingming River under his feet flowed against the current for dozens of feet, colliding with the current surging upstream and splashing in all directions. The falling light was immediately submerged by the surging sword light. However, this sudden attack was obviously premeditated for a long time. Naturally, it would not only have this method. At the moment when the light was submerged, a crimson light had already slashed horizontally from dozens of feet in front of Lu Ping, aiming at Lu Ping's neck. Bang! A stream of sparks suddenly exploded in front of Lu Ping. Unknowingly, the invisible water sword had already appeared in front of Lu Ping, blocking the horizontal slash of the crimson light. When the crimson light dissipated, it was actually a wing blade covered in feathers. However, at the moment when Lu Ping blocked these two attacks, a golden claw suddenly broke through the space behind Lu Ping, directly grabbing at Lu Ping's back. This claw could be said to have come without a sound. Obviously, this was a premeditated attack by the sneak attacker. This was the real killer move. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would probably not be able to withstand this series of sneak attacks. However, how could Lu Ping be so easily schemed against? Just as the claw broke through the space behind Lu Ping's tyrannical divine sense had already detected an extremely subtle spatial fluctuation. This was obviously an expert who was extremely proficient in the art of sneak attacks. Unknowingly, Lu Ping's body had suddenly turned around. The attack aimed at Lu Ping's back was now right in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping's left arm moved forward, and the index finger of his left hand pointed out, colliding with the golden claw. There wasn't the slightest sound or movement, it was just a silent collision. Then, the giant golden claw abruptly retreated, and a drop of blood oozed out from where Lu Ping's index finger had touched it. Then, an angry cry came from the sky. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw the spiritual energy in the sky rapidly converging. The phantom of a majestic giant eagle appeared above Lu Ping's head. The giant eagle's head poked down, and its hook-like beak pecked at the top of his head. Lu Ping was furious. He shouted, "Are you done yet?" As he spoke, Lu Ping suddenly waved his right arm with his sleeve. The spiritual energy in the sky suddenly became chaotic. The spiritual energy giant eagle could no longer maintain its form and immediately collapsed in mid-air. Lu Tianping of the North Sea. The spiritual energy giant eagle was dispersed by Lu Ping with a wave of his sleeve. Suddenly, two figures appeared in the sky. One of them was obviously within Lu Ping's expectations, but the other person made Lu Ping slightly surprised. The other person was none other than the first princess of the Peacock royalty, Yang Huajun. The other person was a young man with a cold expression and a sharp face. He was slightly thin and had broad shoulders. This person was the one who shouted Lu Tianping of the North Sea just now. He was also the lone eagle who failed to kill Lu Qina in Magic Cloud City that day and suffered a loss under Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping ignored the lone eagle youth's clamor. He slowly floated up and said to Yang Huajun, "So it's fellow Daoist Yang. I haven't seen you for many years. I didn't expect to meet you here." When the lone eagle youth saw that Lu Ping didn't pay attention to him at all, a fierce look flashed in his eyes. However, his face was still indifferent, as if he didn't notice that Lu Ping ignored his existence. The golden peacock Yang Huajun also had a cold expression. When he heard Lu Ping's greeting, he twitched the corner of his mouth and said in a crisp voice, "I was passing by here and saw Lu Daoyu practicing swordsmanship. My hands were itchy and I wanted to spar with fellow Daoyu. I hope fellow Daoyu won't blame me for offending you." Ying Ao was naturally the lone eagle youth next to Yang Huajun. However, his previous attacks were all aimed at Lu Ping's vital points. Moreover, his moves were sinister and vicious. Lu Ping really couldn't see that this lone eagle clan cultivator wanted to spar with him. It was clear that he wanted to kill him. Lu Ping nodded with a smile and said, "Since I'm passing by, I won't bother fellow Daoist any longer. If you have time in the future, fellow Daoist Yang can come to the North Sea as a guest. This Lu will definitely welcome you." From beginning to end, Lu Ping didn't even look at Ying Ao. Yang Huajun naturally noticed the subtle difference between the two and quickly said, "I've caused trouble for fellow Daoist. See you later." Lu Ping also smiled and said, "See you later." The escape light under Yang Huajun's feet flickered. Obviously, he was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the escape light dimmed. Yang Huajun couldn't help but frown and look back. Obviously, Ying Ao had stopped Yang Huajun from leaving. Lu Ping was still watching with a smile on his face. Yang Huajun said in a deep voice, "Brother Ao." Ying Ao ignored Yang Huajun's words of dissuasion. Instead, he stared at Lu Ping and said, "On the day of the Battle of Qingming River, Lu Daoyu was also watching from the side, right?" This was not a secret. That day, Lu Ping, Liu Qianyuan, and Tian Tian did not hide their tracks on the lonely hill on the south bank of Qingming River. Not to mention that they had fought with the direct descendants of Nine Profound Tower, Skyward Pavilion, and Purple Sun Palace before. Many people knew that Lu Ping was nearby. Lu Ping inadvertently glanced at Ying Ao and said, "Whether I was near Qingming River that day, shouldn't fellow Daoist Ying know better?" For some reason, Yang Huajun naturally looked at Ying Ao with a face full of doubt. However, he saw a flash of anger on Ying Ao's face. He was an outstanding cultivator among the young generation of Lone Eagle. Even among the third generation of cultivators in the entire cultivation world, there were few who could rival him. He had always thought highly of himself, but he didn't expect that he would accidentally suffer a loss from boss Lu Ping outside Qingming River that day. This matter had always been bothering him. Previously, when they were flying over Qingming River, Ying Ao suddenly discovered that Lu Ping was practicing swordsmanship in Qingming River, so he immediately used sparring as an excuse to sneak an attack on Lu Ping, but the method he used was to kill. He naturally knew the news of Lu Ping defeating Ma Sai the Great, but this Ying Ao was already brooding over his defeat at the hands of Lu Ping, and the news of Lu Ping defeating a late Dharma adept made him even angrier. The Lone Eagle's temperament was originally extreme and stubborn, and this Ying Ao thought highly of himself. This time, when he was traveling with Yang Huajun insisted on traveling along Qingming River, and at the same time, he realized why Yang Huajun wanted to travel along Qingming River. Naturally, he wanted to kill Lu Ping. However, the attack was easily blocked by Lu Ping, and after Ying Ao suffered a loss again, he saw Lu Ping and Yang Huajun talking as if he was nothing, which made Ying Ao burn with jealousy, and he immediately had other thoughts. Lu Ping's mockery made Ying Ao hate him even more, and he said in a cold voice, "So you're also one of the suspects?" This sentence was directed at Yang Huajun, but Lu Ping was confused, but he understood in his heart that this Ying Ao obviously wanted to smear his name. Yang Huajun immediately frowned and said unhappily, "Brother Ying, Please be careful with your words. Uncle Jichang died because he was surrounded, and it has nothing to do with Lu Daoyu. Ying Ao laughed coldly. That day, he also had 2 brothers with him. Don't forget that this person could even defeat a late Dharma adept. It's not impossible for him to join forces with his 2 brothers to kill Senior Jichang and take his natal feather. Enough. Yang Huajun interrupted Ying Ao's words coldly and said, Brother Ying, you've lost your composure. Some things can't be said casually. Ying Ao didn't expect Yang Huajun to be so protective of the human adept in front of him, and his expression instantly became even more gloomy. Yang Huajun apologized to Lu Ping. Hua Jun is really ashamed about what happened today. If I've offended you, Lu Daoyu, please don't blame me. In the future, Hua Jun will definitely apologize to you personally. I'll take my leave now. With that, the conveyance light under Yang Huajun's feet flashed again. This time, Ying Ao didn't stop him, and the 2 disappeared in mid-air together. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.